나의 레벨은 다르다 어나더 레벨 하시크와 함께하는 ASL 시즌 15 24강 F조 경기로 함께하겠습니다. 안녕하세요, 이영경입니다. 16강을 향한 선수들의 치열했던 24강, 지난 월요일에 펼쳐졌던 24강 2조에서는 상위 티어 저그 김명훈 선수와 이영환 선수가 16강에 올라와 있습니다. 이제 16강에 남은 자리는 단 2자리인데요. 오늘 경기를 통해서 16강의 모든 선수들이 결정될 예정입니다. 마지막 24강 경기를 앞두고 있는 4명의 선수 지금부터 저와 함께 만나보시죠. 안녕하세요, 반갑습니다.
안녕하세요.
네, 먼저 탑티어 이재호 선수와 이야기 나눠보겠습니다. 안녕하세요.
네, 안녕하세요.
네, 여전히 또 강력한 우승 후보로 지목되고 있는 이재호 선수인데요. 이번 시즌은 유독 상위 티어 선수들이 24강에서 긴장을 많이 하고 있는 추세가 나오고 있습니다. 이재호 선수는 이번 시즌 첫 경기를 앞두고 계신 소감이 좀 어떠신지요?
저도 좀 불의의 일격을 맞을 것 같아서 무섭고요. 그래서 좀 준비를 많이 해와서 오늘 자신은 있습니다.
이재호 선수가 최근 시즌들의 행보가 워낙 좋았어요. 우승도 하셨고, 그래서 지난 시즌 8강에 머무른 성적이 정말 아쉽게 느껴지실 것 같거든요. 좀 이번 시즌 다시 좀 더 높은 곳으로 가고 싶은 욕심이 있으실 것 같아요.
욕심은 있는데 이제 욕심만큼 잘 안 되더라고요. 이제 다른 선수들이 너무 올라온 속도가 빨라서 그거 쫓아가느라고 좀 힘들고요. 그래서 좀 더 노력을 해야겠다는 생각이 들어가지고 오늘 경기는 좀 정말 결승전 준비하듯이 좀 열심히 해왔거든요. 이걸 좀 해봐야 알 것 같아요. 그래서.
굉장히 좀 긴장을 많이 하신 듯한 모습의 이재호 선수인데, 하지만 이재호 선수를 상대해야 하는 다른 선수들 입장에서는 더 많은 긴장을 하고 계실 것 같습니다. 먼저 이재호 선수의 첫 경기 맞상대 이혜훈 선수와도 이야기 나눠보겠습니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
사실 F조의 4티어 이혜훈 선수지만 전혀 4티어답지 않은 커리어를 또 보유하고 계시기 때문에 이번 시즌은 또 다른 느낌으로 경기를 시작하실 것 같거든요. 이혜훈 선수 소감은 좀 어떠세요?
이번 시즌은 제가 한 3년 동안 스타를 잘 안 했어요. 근데 이번 시즌은 진짜 한 2달 전부터, 그러니까 예선하기 전부터 연습을 진짜 열심히 해가지고 좀 이악 물고 준비했거든요. 그래서 근데 상대가 너무 괴물이어가지고 걱정되긴 하는데 결과가 어떻게 나오든 좀 재밌는 경기 했으면 좋겠어요.
이를 악물고 24강을 준비했다라고 말씀하신 데에는 물론 16강으로 가고 싶으신 열망도 있으시겠지만 그 상대가 이재호 선수여서 더 이를 악물고 준비하시지 않았을까 싶어요. ASL 무대에서 3번을 만나셨는데 아직까지는 정말 이혜훈 선수가 괴물이라고 이재호 선수를 칭할 정도로 승리를 따낸 적이 없으세요. 그래서 조금 더 집념이 생기지 않으셨을까요?
제가 공식전에서는 이긴 적이 없는데 근데 예선에서 한번 재호 형 그 부산 보낸 적이 있거든요. 그래가지고 그때 기억을 살려가지고
네.
준비했습니다. 예.
서로에게 안 좋은 기억을 좀 여러 번 주고받은 두 선수의 대결이 좀 기대되는데요. 오늘의 두 번째 경기 역시 굉장히 기대되는 매치업입니다. 정영재 선수와 이야기 나눠보겠습니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
지난 시즌에 사실 정영재 선수가 최근에 분위기가 쭉 좋으셨는데 지난 시즌에는 24강에서 좀 빠르게 탈락을 하셨습니다. 이번 시즌이 누구보다 좀 기다려지셨을 것 같은데 어떠셨어요?
저번 시즌에 그 게임을 거의 못했어가지고 미련이 없었는데 이번 시즌은 너무 엄청 많이 했기 때문에 좀 미련이 많습니다.
어제는 또 개인 방송국 공지를 통해서 상당히 거친 조가 될 것 같다라는 글을 또 올리셨는데 어떤 선수와의 매치업이 가장 정영재 선수와의 경기에서 거칠게 다가올까요?
일단 시작이 상당히 거칠 것 같고요. 그리고 나머지 분들도 굉장히 센 것 같아서 거칠 것 같네요.
거칠다는 의미가 내가 상대를 거칠게 좀 다루겠다라는 의미인지 경기 자체가 호락호락하지 않게 좀 나를 거칠게 끌고 갈 것 같다라는 건지 좀 자세하게 좀 뜻풀이를 해주실까요?
그건 결과가 말해줄 것 같아요.
알겠습니다. 다음으로는 송병구 선수와 인사 나눠보겠습니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
시즌12 이후에 정말 오랜만에 예선을 통해서 또 이렇게 팬분들 앞에 서게 되셨습니다. 기분이 좀 어떠세요, 송병구 선수?
네, 경기장에 제가 경기하려고 온 게 거의 1년 반 정도 된 것 같더라고요. 그래서 그냥 올 때는 생각이 없었는데 제 경기를 하려고 하니까 좀 긴장이 되고 손에 땀이 많이 나네요. 긴장이 돼가지고.
또 근데 워낙 경험이 많은 선수이기 때문에 막상 경기에 들어가면 또 전혀 다른 모습을 좀 기대하고 계실 것 같아요. 오늘 같은 조에 포진해 있는 2명의 테란이 상당히 쉽지 않은 테란입니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 최근 송병구 선수의 폼을 보면 분명히 많은 분들이 좀 기대를 걸고 계시거든요.
잘 알고 있고요. 거기다가 이제 24강에서 프로토스가 많이 부진하기 때문에 더 많이 응원을 해주시고 계신 것 같아요. 그래서 많이 기대해 주셨으면 좋겠고 꼭 올라가도록 하겠습니다.
또 프로토스로서의 책임감을 가지고 계시는 송병구 선수의 답변이었는데 본격적으로 또 팬 여러분들은 이 네 분께 어떤 부분이 궁금하셨을지 전해 보도록 하겠습니다. 팬 여러분들 입장에서는 24강의 진정한 죽음의 조가 또 마지막 F조다라는 의견들도 있는데요. 실제로 4티어 이혜원 선수조차도 8강 커리어를 보유했을 정도로 굉장히 커리어적인 측면에서 엄청난 조라고 여겨집니다. 이 부분에 대한 선수들의 의견도 궁금하셨던 것 같아요. 정영재 선수, 오늘 F조 어떻게 느껴지시나요?
일단 죽음의 조를 떠나서 제 입장에서는 제일 안 좋은 조라고 생각하고
어떤 점에서 그럴까요?
첫 상대도 역상성의 맵도 되게 불리한 느낌이 있기 때문에 그리고 4티어인 예훈이 형이 4티어 같지 않은 느낌이 너무 강해요.
네.
그래서 센 것 같습니다.
정영재 선수 입장에서는 정말 어렵고 정말 최악의 조이니까 F조가 맞다라고 말씀을 해주셨는데 다음 질문은 이 쉽지 않은 구도의 F조를 뛰어넘기 위해서 준비 과정이 정말 치열하셨을 것 같아요. 준비하는 과정에서 본인의 약점을 보완하는 데 조금 더 치중을 하셨을지 아니면 강점을 조금 더 부각하는 데 집중을 하셨을지도 궁금해하시더라고요. 이현 선수는 좀 준비 과정 어떠셨나요?
저도 이제 앞선 그 조에서 이제 경기 치르는 선수들이랑 연습을 되게 많이 했는데 하다 보니까 이제 부족한 것도 많고 그래가지고 좀 제 장점을 좀 살리려고 열심히 연습했고요. 예, 열심히 했습니다.
열심히 했습니다라는 한마디가 굉장히 묵직하게 다가오는데 그렇다면 선수들이 생각하고 계시는 F조의 주요 경계 대상 어떤 선수가 있을지도 궁금해하시더라고요. 송병구 선수는 어떤 선수를 가장 강력한 경계 대상으로 여기고 계시는지.
이거는 뭐 이재호 빼고 나머지 3명한테 물어보면 다 똑같이 답변이 나오지 않을까 싶은데 이재호 선수가 제일 강한 상대다 보니까 다들 경계하고 있을 것 같아요. 네.
이재호 선수는 그러면 F조에서 가장 좀 강력한 경계 대상 어떤 선수로 여겨지시나요?
저는 정영재 선수요.
어.
요새 제가 동족전이 너무 안 되다 보니까
네.
자신감이 너무 떨어졌고 지난 시즌에서도 동족전이 발목이 잡혀가지고 그게 좀 경계가 많이 됐습니다.
24강에서 태태전은 별로 하고 싶지 않다.
하고 싶지 않은 건 아니고요. 예, 최대한 뭐 만나면 어쩔 수
네네.
없겠지만 최대한 만나도 좋아요. 예.
좋아요. 지금 살짝 긴장되는 마음이 혼란스럽게 표현이 되신 것 같은데요. 마지막 질문으로 조금 더 안정을 취하실 수 있었으면 좋겠습니다. 경기 전 생각나는 한 사람에게 한마디를 해달라는 요청이 있었습니다. 이재호 선수.
요즘에 또 그런 징크스가 있더라고요. 경기장에 누가 응원하러 오면 이긴다. 그래서 또 굳이 또 자기가 응원하겠다고 또 제 와이프가 왔거든요. 예, 장모님하고 왔는데 오늘 꼭 이겨가지고 같이 맛있는 거 사 먹자. 사랑해.
굉장히 스윗하게 또 포부를 밝혀주셨습니다. 자, 마지막 F조인 만큼 현장에도 많은 팬분들이 찾아와서 긴장감 넘치는 경기를 볼 준비를 모두 끝마치셨는데요. 네 선수에게 경기 전 각오를 끝으로 청해 듣겠습니다. 이재호 선수부터 한 말씀 부탁드립니다.
오늘 쉽지 않은 조가 될 것 같은데 그래도 준비 많이 해왔으니까 좀 재미난 경기 보여드리고 가고 싶습니다. 파이팅!
좋습니다. 이혜훈 선수
멋있는 경기 보여드리겠습니다.
기대하겠습니다. 정영재 선수
무조건 올라가겠습니다.
좋습니다. 송병구 선수
네, 열심히 준비했는데 16강에 꼭 가도록 하겠습니다.
네, F조 선수들의 멋진 경기 기대하겠습니다. 인터뷰 고맙습니다. 네, 하식도와 함께하는 ASL 시즌 15 마지막 24강 F조 경기를 앞두고 있습니다. 16강의 남은 자리를 차지할 2명의 선수 어떤 선수로 결정될지 지금부터 경기 함께 만나보시죠.
It's time for Group F here in the ASL. What's up, everybody? Tastosis and Tastosis are back. This has been an amazing ASL so far. And as we close out this group, we're going to see that next stage of the ASL that's so important, the round of 16, which is such more of a marathon for the players and for Tastosis and myself. And we're going to see, I guess you could say, who's going to be closer and closer to actually becoming that champion.
Yeah, and you know the list of people I think that can become champions it's a very short list for this season, not as short as seasons that have Flash in it, of course, but one of them going to be playing today, Tasteless. Light is the best Terran in the world, and I think the best player in the world, so I'm very excited to see him play tonight in this group.
Yeah, Light is a guy, I think we have to say he's going to be advancing. That it would be an even bigger plot twist than Mini, who's already been knocked out. I'm pretty sure Mini should be the biggest upset, but if Light were to not make it, that would be crazy. That would be huge. By the way, before we get started, guys, we want to say thank you to everybody who's supporting us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/ASL English. If you sign up for a year, you're going to be supporting Tastosis, me, the production staff that helps us edit these videos and get them translated to you. You're also going to get access to our secret podcast.
That's right. And you're going to love the secret podcast. We just talk about anything there. It's a lot of fun. I feel bad. The one that we just recorded, I got cut off when I was really wanting to dive deep on one very secret topic. But I guess we'll do that for the next episode.
Yeah. By the way, I want to tell you right now, Tastosis, we got a lineup of, the results here from everybody in the groups. When I was trying to open up the show, man, my cat is in the cat tower behind the camera, was about to just pounce right on I was like, this is either going to be really good content or I'm not going to know what I'm saying when I open the show, and it turned out to be the latter.
Now, taking a look at these groups we have today, Light, Sacsri, JYJ, and Stork. This is a group where we're really kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that Stork makes it out, not just because he's such a fun player and such a legend, but because the Protoss line is very small so far. It's very strong. We have basically 3 of the 4 best Protoss in the world advancing already. But, it would be really good to get one more in there.
Yeah, I'm hoping Stork can make it. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think we are very likely to have it, stay with the small Protoss lineup that we've got. I think that Stork has shown some great games. He doesn't seem to be tournament viable. As in, I don't think he's a guy that can get to a round of 4 or a finals here. It just seems like there's enough good players with enough good types of play that he's not able to stay competitive to go deep into a tournament.
Yeah, it is a little bit hard on him. He is one of the players, and it's been mixed results for the players with children, but Stork does have kids, and you can definitely see that sometimes reflected in some of these guys' play, right? As you get older and you take on these other responsibilities. I don't think it's that Stork is incapable, but when you get that many things going on in your life, that it can make it a bit harder than someone that's still living single at home practicing all day.
Yeah, and I also think that, Stork, when he was at his absolute greatest, I think he was so good at build order optimization, but I do feel like that's a trait that, a skill that a lot of players have really become very good at. I feel like we're in an era where build order optimization is so much better than it was before. If you go back and look at Stork's games, some of the stuff he would do was just so genius and he made the game so easy for himself in ways that other players didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And look, he's not the fastest pro either.
No.
So, that could be tough as well.
In fact, I believe he's actually the slowest, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's correct. Yeah. I think he's, and you could be slow and still, and still kill it. But, I guess we'll talk more about Stork when we get to his match.
Yep.
But I don't think it's going to be an easy ASL for him. I've got my fingers crossed he gets out of this group, but I think the other guys in this group are looking extremely strong.
You are for sure right about that. We already talked about Light some. I'm quite convinced that he is the best player in the world right now. But going up against Sacsri, I think Sacsri is one of the most undervalued pros. If I was doing some sort of fantasy league with pros, I would pick him up immediately because Sacsri is legitimately really good. I think this is a guy that is a round of 16 level competitor that could, you know, he's one of those guys, he could go to the round of 8 or he could go out in the round of 24 as well, right? So he's not 100% solid, but he's got the skills to take down anybody.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one, but again, Light clearly the favorite here. It's going to be a very tough match for Sacsri, possibly the toughest match for him in the entire ASL. It's a rough start for this guy. Let's see how it goes as we get into our first map.
All right, over on the left-hand side, we have Light. And on the right-hand side, we have Sacsri. Okay, so I want to talk just a little bit about Light and his level because, you know, you look at this season, and it's pretty damn Terran heavy, and this is mostly Light's fault, in my opinion here.
This is Light's fault?
Yes, like literally this is waves that Light created. So basically, right, Flash went to the military, so Light took over as the best Terran. And normally, Terrans just look to Flash. Like, that is literally, like, Terrans thought that Terran versus Protoss wasn't going to be playable anymore when we were still just casting StarCraft 2 all the time. And then Flash came back and solved how to beat Arbiter builds. Like, that's a real thing that happened, right? So, like, that's happened a lot of times where Flash has solved stuff, made new builds, and really changed the way Terrans played. It happens all the time. But with Flash gone, it was left to Light, and it took a while. But Light at this point, Tasteless, is so good, and he has taken Valkyrie builds to this level that no one knew they could ever get to. Just, he basically made these new Valkyrie builds that, like, ruined the ladder. There was actually a period of about a week where I got all into every game I played Zerg. And then also a period of about a week where I didn't play any Zergs. I think they just all logged off because they were sick of the build because it was so strong.
Oh, I can imagine. I think also to expand on off what you were saying, Tastosis, I think Light's approach to the game is a bit more conventional and I think a bit more emulatable. You know, not all players see the game the same way. And obviously we're not done learning about this game either, right?
Yeah.
But I think Flash had some of these approaches. And by the way, sometimes when you're watching Flash play, he gets into such a broken position where I'm like, oh, is this like impossible to beat Terran in?
Yeah.
Where Lights looks like a little bit harder to do, but a little bit more straightforward.
Yes.
In that sense. And, you know, it kind of reminds me a little bit from the Protoss's perspective as an example. Like when I would watch Mini, and you know, I'm learning, but I'm not able to bring it to my play. Does that make sense? Like he's pulling these things off where I'm kind of like, you know, he's seeing more things than I can see or a lot of other players can see.
Yes.
And I've talked to a lot of other good Protoss players who have the same experience where it's like he's a lot tougher to follow the line of thought that, for instance, someone like Bisu is. Like Bisu's a great player to just sit down and study and go through a bunch of VODs if you want to improve. And I feel like Light is a little bit more like that. And I think that with Light's success and really, you know, killing it without Flash being around, and he's really finally been able to shine, I think he's helped a lot of Terrans rethink their own play.
You're completely correct, Tasteless. Like he is the #1 player to study if you're an up-and-coming Terran player and you want to get better, because he plays the most straightforward mechanical style that you need to get good at. So yeah, it's that's certainly right, and he's so good right now. He's so strong. I don't know if he's going to do one of his Valkyrie builds here, but oh man.
Sorry, Tastosis, go on. I interrupted you with my reaction.
I got to sit there and appreciate you screaming about an Overlord dying. Obviously, that's really painful for Sacsri, but right now, Light is going for like a very fast +1 build, and you know that's pretty standard stuff. The thing is, he's changed Valkyrie builds so much that you can't even tell if he's doing one anymore. Like for a while there, you could tell, and then Zerg started doing all-ins and stuff to try to counter it, but right now it's like he opens up and it looks completely standard like bio, and then suddenly he has like 4 Valkyries, and you're like, what?
Yeah, the Valkyrie development in the game is really interesting. I did a YouTube video a while back where I talked about, one of the things that makes StarCraft so great is that you can go back and look at really old games, and you are looking at the same game you're looking at now, just not as pretty. But there was one small adjustment that Blizzard made because the Valkyrie missiles themselves are buggy. They talked to the pros about this. The pros were like, no, it's fine. You can make the missile less buggy, And the truth is Valkyries really weren't used very often. So it was like, all right, well, let's see what happens here. And now we have this small development that's turned out to be pretty big where Valkyries are really being used to kind of face off against Mutalisks.
Yeah, it's with that sprite bug gone, like Valkyries have so much power because the Mutalisk actually got a lot better. That's the only other thing that changed with StarCraft Remastered is the turn rate, right? Like the game is more responsive than it used to be.
Yes.
By a fair margin. It's actually quite a bit, and it actually changed the balance a little bit. Mutas are much stronger than they used to be. Also, Dragoon Micro is a lot stronger than it used to be, so you don't see as many like FD push type things because it can be out microed on turn rate 24 a lot easier than it used to be in the old days.
Yeah, so they've sharpened up this part of the game, and I totally agree with you with the Dragoon Micro. I can do stuff with my Dragoons I never even imagined I would be able to do in the older StarCraft. And just to be clear, can you actually clarify exactly what the bug was with the Valkyrie missiles, just for the uninitiated?
Yeah, so it was a sprite bug, basically. It had to do with the amount of like graphics on the screen, the way that Valkyrie missiles shoot, I guess it is. Really like screwed up the game. So basically Valkyries just wouldn't shoot. You'd get 3-4 Valkyries and you try to make them shoot, and like one missile would shoot out of one Valkyrie. So they just weren't used like in the old days. And now they all shoot fine and they'll do all their damage, and they're great. So taking a quick look at this game, Tasteless, it's like a 4 racks plus 1. Sacsri has his third base up, and he's going for quite a quick hive here.
Yeah, I was going to say the Queen's Nest is up pretty quick. We see scans coming down here, and Marines, they're pretty eager to try to get across the map and put some pressure on here. You can see Sacsri's kind of hanging just below these depots and trying to chip away at them and see if he can keep these Marines back here. And +1 attack is done as well. Another dive here from Light, but Sacsri's not letting him have it. There are no sunken colonies up. The hive is starting insanely quickly. This is a hive rush, by the way. This is as fast as you can get a hive, okay? But I would be a little bit uncomfortable with the presence of these Marines on the map and the fact that they could generate their own attack on Sacsri's side of the map.
That's certainly true. In fact, he's already sent a couple Marines up, a very common tactic to try to go over and kill some of your opponent's drones. This is most likely going to be a Guardian Rush, but without any sunken colonies, there is some real danger here. Now, Sacsri is actually sending 4 links up, so he actually felt that this was occurring, which is really good, because if you lose all these drones to 2 Marines, that's almost game over against someone of Light's caliber.
Yeah, this is almost like the Zergling run-by version of Terran, where they send the Marines out in a pair and just try to come in there and kill whatever they can. And it's very effective, especially when you have a Zerg that's basically trying to operate off of almost nothing. You could suddenly feel, the punishment for not having a sunk there. Now Light is halfway across the map. I'd be sweating right now if I were Sacsri.
Yeah, he's really playing on the edge of safety right now. But if he can make this work out, then, I mean, fantastic for him. He is dogging this army quite a bit. His control is strong, but you see that Light just knows exactly how to deal with this. Now he has 2 starport. I bet you he'll start an armory here in a second. I mean, he could go into vessels, but with the speed of this hive, I think that it is going to be a Guardian Rush, right?
I mean, it has to be, I think, but I feel like the moment you morph Guardians, then the Marines run in and kill you. So, like...
Exactly, yeah.
This is basically like a tug of war over who's really in control in the middle of the map here, and it is one that, as time passes, it's becoming self-evident that Light is winning it. He's going to go up to the north here, and he's going to be able to come in and take out that natural... I actually think it would have been wiser to... Sorry, I meant to say he's going to take out the third base. I think it would have been wiser to take out the natural. I think that's an instant win, but this is going to be devastating here for Sacsri.
Yeah, he's losing this base 100%. He's going to try to reduce the Marine medic count. this is putting Sacsri even more all in than before. Like obviously you're kind of all in with the Guardian Rush no matter what. You have to make it work. But now, wait a minute, Tasteless. Oh my God!
I can't.
That was a
believe
miscalculation.
that.
He should have targeted that hatchery.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have. I can't believe what I just saw there.
Damn.
I
Well,
can't
now
well,
that's painful.
Well, I mean, that's almost, I don't even know what to call that. I guess just a bad play. I mean, you can, mathematically, it is possible to just target the hatch down. And I understand his idea was like, okay, well, let's trade out a few more mutas, optimize it, and I think he basically miscalculated. Oh, 2 Marine run by again. Well, I think Light is still on the path to victory here.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, the Valkyries are out. It does feel like the Zerg is getting more and more cornered here. And he did kill all the drones at that third base. Oh, wow. The Guardians in the open, they're not that good.
No,
Guardians
3 Guardians aren't good anyways, but yeah, morphing just randomly in the center of the map is extra painful. Light is getting mass Valkyries at this point. It's unfortunate because I think that Sacsri's idea wasn't bad. Like, this is one way some top Zergs are trying to deal with the Valkyrie rushes, is getting very quick Guardians, like before the Valks can make the difference. But as is, I mean, obviously the Valkyrie's getting all these extra shots. Light is getting way far ahead.
Yeah, this game is over. We will get the closure, by the way, on that hatchery. That is going to be killed off by the Marines up here. Yeah, you know, I think that the idea is pretty cool, but clearly Light's execution and kind of raw strength in the matchup allows him to just basically overpower and bully Sacsri. If we can go back to kind of the starting point of where Sacsri lost control of that, it was actually when the 2 Marines did the run-by. That's a game you can really learn, just a simple tactic like that. For basically a Zerg that's being so greedy, they won't even make a single sunken colony. They're trying to rush 2 hives so fast. Just sneak out 2 Marines on a suicide mission where they're going to kill some drones. And you lose a couple drones like that, and now your build is already messed up. So great play by Light.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sacsri, it's one of those games where if he wins that, he looks like a genius. If he loses that, he looks kind of foolish. And I don't think it's very fair to what he was trying, because it just sort of looked like he got dominated. But I think Light had very S-class handling of that whole situation.
He certainly did, and he actually did a build that was really good against it. The +1 4 racks allowed him to have more buy on the map. If he had done the more standard 3 racks, Sacsri would have held and been in a better spot. But either way, a great first map there from Light. You can really see his power. I think Sacsri, don't count him out yet. He can still come through this group.
Yeah, I think he's got a shot. I mean, look, I think Light is just going to 2-0 and move on, and then this group starts to get interesting.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I think also our next match coming up I'm quite excited about. Really could go either way. JYJ against Stork. We're going to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll get into that second match.
실성사이다 제로.
상큼함 맥스, 칼로리 X, 맛있는 함 제로. 요즘 제일 탐나는 제로, 우리들의 제로, 탐스 제로. 같이 떠나볼래?
Welcome back, everybody. The ASL continues on, but before we start our second game here, we want to say thank you to everybody who's been supporting us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/ASL English. Sign up for a year. You get access to the Tastosis secret podcast, and you're supporting StarCraft Remastered, and our Tastosis and me and the people that help us make this possible.
Yeah, maybe you've been sitting there thinking, you know what? Yeah, I'll do that, but you haven't done it yet. Now's the time. Go ahead, patreon.com/ASL English. I think that this season is going like fantastically so far. I've gotten a lot of feedback. People are loving the games. It's been very exciting matches so far, and it's coming out quicker than it has in any previous season. So really proud of everything that is going on here, and thank you guys so much for that support.
Yeah, this was a learning experience for us. We had never tried to produce our own content, and with any learning experience, there's always bumps in the road, but we're going to continue to give you guys our best, to do our best, to make this informative, to make the casting high level, to make it fun for you guys. So we love you guys. We appreciate the support. Thank you for supporting the esport that started it all, man.
Yes. So getting into our next match. Oh, that's crazy. JYJ's ASL record, 6 wins, 12 losses against Protoss. I promise you he's really great in this matchup.
This is a man after your own heart, Tastosis.
Yep.
You see yourself in this guy, I could tell.
Oh, you better believe I do. And it's one of those mirrors that makes me look taller and have more muscles, too. And still he's only 6 and 12. Stork over here, I guess his only winning matchup in ASL, 8 and 6. I mean, this is how brutal ASL is, man. Actually, until Light won that season, he actually had a losing record in ASL as the second best Terran. So, like, you look at these records, you have to take them with a spoon of salt or whatever. What's that saying? Because it's
salt?
not. Yeah, a grain of salt. Well, a spoonful of salt in this case. I'm like, no, listen, JYJ's great at this matchup, but he's got a terrible record. I think that this is a pretty even match, honestly, between these two.
If you're Tastosis, it's a bathtub of salt. But yes, it's no. I think this is an even match. I really do. Stork is one of the players. He always looks smart, but he never. Not never, I should say. He hasn't looked as strong and as robust as he has in the past. And that's okay. That's true for a lot of these guys who've been around forever. But every ASL is a moment to turn a new leaf, to try again, to see if he can get back on top. We're going to see how he does against JYJ. Very new and modern Terran in this best of one.
So we have JYJ on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have Stork. So yeah, Stork, it's funny because you say that he really sometimes looks quite brilliant. I sometimes say that he looks like really stupid in his games because he always has such a plan that some certain things will go wrong and it'll look really bad, right? Like, I can remember so many games where he'll, like, just fly a shuttle in full of DTs and he'll just die to one turret and nothing will get out. And I'm like, and then he still beats you with carriers and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, and he's, like, the slowest pro gamer that there is. It's like, oh, man. It looks stupid, but he's got the plans to be able to do it.
And there was times when this guy was considered top 3, top 4 in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he really... Yeah. I know not everybody's been following StarCraft 1 forever, so, don't take it the wrong way if you're a diehard fan. We're not mocking the guy here, but, like, yeah, this guy was so good for periods and was very good at StarCraft 2, was considered one of the best coaches in the game for a while in that. It looks like we should have, he sent it probe out pretty early, but I think the Terran can still get a barracks up and a gas in time. Am I wrong about this, or is this literally
So he'd
out?
have to build his gas before the barracks if he wants it. It's up to him, and it looks like he is going to do that. And if you do this, generally you have to skip one SCV to get your barracks up at a reasonable time. Because see, like right now the barracks is about 10 seconds later than it should be, and that keeps adding up. So oftentimes you do need to skip a little bit. With the probe in your basis early, you have to decide, do I really want to scout? Like, you got to be careful about that, because if you're sending a scout out as well, then everything gets delayed again because it's just too many SCVs not mining, etc., etc.
So, to talk about Stork for a second, because I grew up watching Stork play. Obviously, Bisu and some of the other great Protoss players too, but Stork was a guy that I think educated a player like me about the deep amount of knowledge you can have about something that can change the whole way you play the game and your chances of winning and you get yourself in a bad spot, but you can basically recover. You know, every once in a while you'll see somebody like in the old days, Slayer's Boxer, and they have some kind of a crazy micro, and we can all go, oh, how did he do that? But we do know how he did it, right? He's fast. He clicked perfectly. He knows how to target. He knows how to evaluate the hit points on everything and see, okay, can he win this with good control or not, right? And then there's another form of knowledge, which is this sort of deep understanding of how the game operates, how to get from point A to point B, or maybe skip B and go to C if you need to, and what to look for in that. And that's really where Stork came into play as far as build orders go, is he was really cutting corners. Like, this is one of the guys that knew, like, here's where you just stop making Dragoons. There were periods in StarCraft where, like, that wasn't as much of a concept. Like, you make this, and then you halt an army production here, you make workers here. Now you kick into this, look for, you know, does he have 4 tanks or 6? Well, then you react this way. He was a guy that was sort of able to, while everybody else was driving a car that was a manual, he was driving a stick. And kind of able to move through the game a little bit faster, and really was very much ahead of his time. But I think a lot of what he's done to improve the game, it's because it's a knowledge thing, right? That's been shared and circulated extremely well. And obviously we're 25 years into this, and now, you know, other players are also kind of adding their you know, incredible input into the game. But, you know, for me, Stork was always that guy. And that's why he was able to be slow, or like you said, Tastosis, he could lose his shuttle with DTs and then still win the game. And it's like, okay, well, he just knows how to evaluate situations so well and navigate what can usually be a pretty treacherous game for most Protoss players.
Yeah. You very well said. Now, you know, we mentioned a lot about Stork, and he is such a legend, but just to mention about JYJ, like, he's considered like top 4 Terran for quite some time. I don't know if he's still exactly top 4, right? Like, he's right on that brink where he could be like a top 8 guy regularly very, very soon. Hold on. This Dragoon micro, very annoying. Looks like he will be able to get that inside, and there is already a Vulture on the map, so yeah, JYJ going to be fine here. But that's just something to mention, right? Like, he hasn't had quite the success he's looking for. He's been on the brink for a while. And we're just kind of waiting to see him fully flesh out his own style at this point. That's something that Flash said about him specifically a couple years ago. Because people were asking, they're like, are you going to, like, help JYJ? It seems like he's really close to being one of the really best players. And he was like, no, JYJ is good enough. He needs to kind of figure out what he wants to do in the game.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. Whenever you look at StarCraft, you can't think about it like this is the only way to play. There's too much nuance to a game like StarCraft. And, you know, some play styles work for a little bit, and then they become obsolete immediately. And some players are able to revamp their play over and over as well. And I think that's, you know, like, truly wise from Flash to kind of point out that, like, no, he needs to go find his voice a little bit more. By the way, there are 3 Vultures here, and this is not plugged up. So, yeah, I thought maybe, like, my eyes were bad and that Dragoon could block that. I'm like, man, maybe I'm, you know, making my wallets too tight. But no, never mind.
Well, that's a little bit bad. Like, that was some good quality probe kills, right? He's got some good mines out on the map. I would like to see him push those goons really aggressively because he's got the mines to kind of trap them in there, and he might be able to get some goon kills, but chooses not to do that. I think he only had 1 Marine in the bunker anyways, so I see why. But yeah, the little Vulture counterattack. Anytime you can run in with a few Vultures and actually get, like, 5 probes or something, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, the Dragoon pressure is going to come in here. He's got to be careful. Okay. Good pairing there. The Dragoons will get their shots off. If they don't have siege mode, you can dive on the tanks. This was something that was freaking Tastosis and me out when we came back from StarCraft 2. We're like, oh, you can just do that? You can just run in there and kill the tanks like that? Okay. And it's pretty commonplace now to see these pretty strong pushes. I don't think he's going to get in. It seems like the balancing act has been handled perfectly from JYJ. Didn't drop a tank, didn't drop the bunker. Oh, and I guess an observer was picked off. I think we saw that exploding back there.
These are very Stork things that we're seeing here. It's like he's hitting the bunker so he can't save the observer. Now, he's going 2-base carrier, which, like, there isn't much that's more Stork than that.
Yeah,
Like,
you know,
you and I were
our
actually talking about this the other day, where there was this season where he was going super fast carrier and even losing his natural and winning games.
Yeah, and this is so funny. Carrier micro, you don't have to be fast. Well, with the carriers, you have to be precise. Not all micro, by the way, is about like just clicking all the buttons quickly and being like, oh, 500 APM. Like some of it's actually about being like very, very precision based. And Stork's been very good at that. Where you have to be fast with carriers is stopping and knowing exactly what you have to do with everything else in the map so you can go back to the carriers. Now, I can't remember the season that this happened in, but he did like every version of the carrier build you could do, including the 2-base carrier. And this is by far the cheesiest, by the way. And this is a good build. Watch out, people on the ladder, because this is probably all over the place now. But the idea is you just barely have enough Dragoons to hold off a push, and the carriers can be sprung on the Terran very quickly.
That's right. If you don't know that they're coming, it's really rough. And basically any situation in which you can get your opponent to go siege or turrets early on, it's much less likely that they're going to figure this out. Like, Quick Carrier is the best counter to these, like, eBay Armory builds. Like, it's very tough because when you figure it out, it's, like, already kind of too late to do any sort of timing attack. But that being said, JYJ's already on 4 factories and already has a starport with an add-on. So this is a lot of tools that he has, right? We don't know exactly how he's going to utilize them, but something like some pressure with his factory units and maybe a drop at the same time could not only scout what's going on, but possibly do some significant damage.
Now, one of the things that's very kind of cool about this is how the Protoss is going to try to not stretch time. It's really the opposite. Like how you make the game as short as possible until you have 4 carriers out, if that makes sense. 4 carriers is the number. 2 will defeat an army that has no Goliaths. But, I mean, we're not at a game where that's going to be a factor. But, you know, if you have 2, obviously, if they just vulture tank push you, your carriers will kill that and you'll stay alive. But, okay, a drop is going to be inbound here. Now, these builds they can be good or not good against drop. It really just depends on how each side handles it. You can see Stork is basically in cleanup mode here. But, you know, 1 Terran scan, if he can get it in there to see those carriers, it's going to be huge, man.
Now, he's flying over, and he's going to see no third base. So the millisecond you see no third base here, Tasteless, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There absolutely should be a third base. We're 10 minutes into the game. So he's going to know that something really fishy is up, and it certainly feels like carrier.
Well,
flies in, sees those carriers. He's going to lose the drop before anything really gets out. So that's a pretty big bonus there for Stork. When I was talking about, you know, he has these tools, he's now missing one. The dropship isn't going to do any damage. He's probably not going to make another one, at least for a while. And that's painful because that was a lot of money he put into that.
Yeah, dropping the vultures too. I mean, that's, you know, the vultures are always helpful to have in the push. By the way, he's going to opt to expand to the bottom. Basically, Terran can't both push the bottom and then also push up until the natural and the main, so it makes Terran make a decision. And the carriers can come in handy over here where they can basically come in and defend. The second pair of carriers are out. I think +1 attack should be finishing pretty soon here as well. You really want to try to get the attack upgrade as soon as possible because it makes a huge difference with the carriers. This seems a bit too cavalier here with these carriers, though, to come in like this.
He's going a little bit crazy there, for sure. He's like flying over mines he hasn't cleared, so there's great vision for JYJ as well. But it looks like Stork not going to be punished for that. His Dragoons roaming the map, helping to clear these mines out as his carrier force builds. And this is going to be pretty much the game decider coming up here, most likely at least, right? JYJ has a big army. He has enough Goliaths to fight the current number of carriers, but carriers scale up pretty quickly. 4 is scary, but 4 can be dealt with 12 Goliaths. Now, as soon as you start getting above that, the Goliath count has to be very large.
Now, what you want to do is you want the Dragoons to force siege, and then you back up. Or maybe not. I feel like you should be careful. I guess he's on high ground, so this isn't as bad for the Dragoons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anytime you can fight
down
from that high ground, it's like pretty damn strong. And you can see he's actually demolishing absolutely everything. Even if he loses his Dragoons, just clearing the siege tanks against a Terran on 2 gas is such a victory.
Yeah, I just learned a whole lot by that little engagement there. That was very cool to see. So the tank count's lower, right? Now, Goliaths, you just don't make these units unless you're fighting carriers or there's arbiters or like maybe a shuttle. But basically, Goliaths are bad versus Zealots and Dragoons. So as long as the carrier count stays the same, even if you trade out a lot of the Dragoons, it's okay because you have a ground army that basically is better than the Goliaths and the small number of tanks that are already there. And that might be the most pivotal fight that we just saw happen back there. Because he basically took the tanks on, the tank count got low, and he was able to pull away from this.
That's it's very rough right now for JYJ. This is not a situation you ever want to be in as a Terran player. You know, you have to rebuild your tank count to some amount. And even though his supply looks okay, it looks like it's the same. It's like Vulture Goliath is just not going to fight well. The Dragoons can kind of kill everything.
Yeah, and it's hard for Terran. You know, if they go for 2 base and it doesn't quite work, okay, there's a drop coming in now. This dropship can get over the cannon, and it needs to. It needs to unload here. But, you know, you're not going to get much more done with that. The Vultures will come in as well and probably do a decent job killing probes up here. There's no cannon in the main. This is actually going to be a lot of worker kills. You know, when you rush for carriers like this, you really can't afford to lose any workers in the process. This is not a Protoss that, you know, is massing up and macroing. This is sort of a very tight style of play to try to bring out here.
He's, you know, he's doing a good job with the Vulture harassment for sure. I think it's still kind of a tough position in some ways. We'll see what his siege tank count is. He's finally getting his 3rd gas, which is super, super important. Still only on that +1, not getting 2-1 quite yet. And here comes 6 carriers. Yeah, snipes a tank immediately. And he's already got +2 attack.
Yeah, and +2 is where it really starts hurting the Terran. You can shift between each of the Goliaths so quickly. And, you know, it's going to be tough to get over here. I guess, can the Dragoons just kind of run by this? If he can get the carrier to snipe that one tank, it's kind of far back. So he's trying to move into that now. He does get it.
Yeah, here it seems like Stork just wants to reduce the Goliath count some. If you get it low enough, the 6 carriers will dominate, but he's lost quite a few interceptors, so he's going to back up and rebuild a little bit.
Did he lose a carrier back there? I can be confused by this sometimes.
No, I don't believe he.
Okay,
I don't believe
so
he lost a
has
carrier.
6.
Yeah.
Well, you know, once you get up to 8, and especially when you get to 10, it becomes ridiculous. Like it's crazy what you can do. So it looks like he wants to angle this more towards the main, and just see if he can draw Goliaths down there. And this is a funny way that you have to play the game from here, because it looks kind of odd. It'll look like the Terran's succeeding when actually the Protoss is winning the game, because even though the Terran's not being killed, the Goliath count slowly drops, and the carriers basically pick the fights like where they want to go. So he's going to go for the turrets over here, and if the Goliaths run up, he just runs away.
Yeah, this is actually a little bit like playing against like a Mutalisk dive. You have to like kind of attack Protoss here to get the carriers out of your main, because the Goliaths literally can't walk around. If they try to walk around, the carriers leave the base. So the only defense you have is an attack.
The cool thing about what JYJ is doing is he has the right idea to fraction off small groups of tanks and vultures and basically just take fights here. But, I mean, this is getting pretty taxing for both sides. I mean, we're going to need these carriers to kill a lot of stuff. We have one carrier flying into a turret here. If he can send the army back over here, even though he's going to lose a lot of probes, he could probably save that Nexus. Terran has basically done a great job of actually keeping this 3rd command center alive and in a spot where it's just probably not going to be killed.
He has done that. It's pretty impressive, right? And he killed all the probes at the bottom right, which is nice. But the carrier count is getting out of hand. There's 7 right there. And I don't know, I imagine like 2 more are making right now. So even though he's taken a lot of damage, his carrier micro, and like, look at this. Look at how efficient he's being now. Just picking off unit after unit.
Yeah, once he realizes he has time to not respect the Goliaths, he'll then target down all the tanks. And this is where the strain comes in, because really the difficulty for Terran in fighting this is that it's a tightrope act. When the tanks are gone, then the Dragoons can just kill the Goliaths. The Dragoons will dominate the Goliaths. The Dragoons only fear the tank, and in this case, they just ignore the one tank that's there and go elsewhere on the map.
This is rough, man. Getting into this 3rd base, finally under attack. The carrier's coming along as well. He did lose one, so down to 6. but that's not something that you can easily attack or defend. Like, the command center very likely to fall here, and this game looks like it's Stork's. I don't see any real comeback for JYJ at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is looking really rough, man. You know, even though Stork probably has almost no probes in this game, it kind of doesn't matter because Terran's going to mine out. And the truth is the carriers never go away. I mean, that's what's so scary about this, is that they continuously can crank out more and more, and we're going to eventually get up to 11 or 12 carriers. And that just becomes a game of control where the Protoss is at an advantage.
Yeah, the carriers really are just so scary, especially from someone like Stork that really knows how to utilize them, not just micro-wise, but also movement-wise, because that's really...
Yeah.
Carriers turn it kind of into a game of chess, right, where it's like they move to certain areas, and if you don't counter-move just perfectly, the carrier player is going to gain way too much value.
Yeah, and I think he's played an excellent chess game here. He's going to take that last tank out and then go for a dive in. And this is just like, this is so impressive here from Stork. I got to say, you know, this is the thing. Stork is always viable. I don't know how far he's going to go in this tournament, but man, I mean, the game he played against JYJ here is just something else.
He really did kind of smash him. And JYJ's opening was not even bad or anything. I felt like he had opportunities based on what he was doing, the units he had, some of the harassment he was trying to pull off. But, you know, Stork got into these carriers really quickly, and it really did come down to that first fight. Like, the first fight didn't go well, and you're never really going to hit the critical mass you need as Terran. You can't lose fights against carriers.
Yeah, you know, that was really almost inspiring there, what Stork did. I mean, JYJ is such a scary player, but Stork basically takes a game like that and says, you're going to play by my rules. And by the way, he now has a reputation of doing these cheesy carrier builds, and he doesn't seem to care. Like, he's going to do it over and over again. He doesn't seem to care if you know he might do this. Like,
yeah.
By the way, he didn't try to hide the carrier tech.
No, he just kind of made it. Yeah.
He's like...
Well, any situation in which you find your opponent not going quick academy or quick dropship, the carrier build is going to be pretty strong, just because it takes a while to figure it out, and it might be too late at that point. So Stork going to go on to that winner's match, and like, I would imagine Light is going to just thrash him, but, you know, you do a build like that and Light gets caught off guard, he could lose that as well.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You know, Stork always has a plan. That's one thing we know about him. He doesn't come in and try to feel this out and figure something out on the fly. So this should be an exciting one, man. Light versus Stork coming up next after this short break. Don't go away.
상큼함 맥스, 칼로리 X, 맛있는 탐스 제로. 요즘 제일 탐나는 제로, 탐스 제로. 같이 떠나볼래?
솔직히 인간적으로 두 개 다 가졌어요 baby 칼로리 제로 맛은 제대로 그래 걱정 빼고 고민 빼고 맘소리 빼고 This is zero life This is zero life 뺄 건 뺐어 질성제이다 제로 맛있어 제대로 없어도 되는 건 빼고 살자 제로 칠성사이다 제로 Through the trial and error, I'ma still shine. No matter what life throw at me, I'ma still grind. Put in work, got me feeling like it's my time.
We're back, everybody. I could not be more excited for this match that's coming up here. And by the way, the fact that Stork is looking so good, that makes me so pumped for this. I think that if Light and Stork play 10 games, I think there's no way that Stork wins. But I think if it comes down to just one, let's not count Stork out.
I can't disagree with you on that. With the types of builds that he will use, is willing to use, is good at, those can really catch anyone off guard. Honestly, for Light, I'm not sure what his plan is going to be. This is a little bit tricky for your opener. How do you play when you know that, like, if the game gets into a more prolonged position where you're not behind, you're going to win, but how do you get it there?
Yeah, and, you know, the carrier build, obviously, you know, that's one of the aces up Stork's sleeve, right? I think no matter how good you are with Terran, when you play against somebody who's Protoss who knows how to play that game, it's not easy. But you know that Stork came into this group expecting, if he wins versus JYJ, he knows he's going to play light, right? So what's the other build he's going to bring?
Dude, honestly, yeah, guys, look, it's a foreigner in the audience. Hi.
Look at him. AfreecaTV Production, zoom in on his face.
Very well dressed, as he should be for this wonderful group.
That's right.
Cheers, man.
That's why I want you dressed like it's Easter Sunday when you're here in the studio.
But Tastosis, it looks like we're gonna get this started. I just wanted to sneak in there. He might do the same build, man. Like Stork is like that sometimes. He's like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. This game is going to start now. These two players are fighting for the two only remaining spots in the round of 16 of the ASL. Let's see who moves on and who goes down to the final match of Group F. Before we get started in this game, guys, we want to say thank you again for everybody for the love on Patreon. That's patreon.com/ASL English. If you haven't signed up already, we want to encourage you to sign up for a year and support our endeavors in keeping the original esport alive forever.
And you know what? Make sure if you are a subscriber or you're going to subscribe, check out the Tastosis Secret Podcast. We're having a lot of fun making it, and I can't wait to actually continue the conversation that was so rudely cut off by the match starting earlier today.
Yeah, guys, we appreciate it. And let's just get into this game, man. I'm excited. I have to imagine Light has to open up so cautiously here against somebody like Stork, because if Light can get to where he needs to be as a Terran player, he should be able to close it out, right?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But at the same time, you have to be a little bit careful. Like, if you open too cautiously, that's bad as well, right? Like, sure. you don't want to let Stork like run away with a greedy build. And in fact, I mean, this I think it's a gas steal with a gateway. Yeah, it looks like that's what it's going to be. So like just a forward gateway plus stealing your opponent's gas. But yeah, if you're opening up completely defensive and Stork does things like Nexus first and fast third Nexus, you could be in trouble. Now here comes the probe. Does Light try to save his gas by canceling an SCV? Probably
there is
not.
An income lead. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way that Light can stop it now. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you have it. He does steal the gas, and it'll be interesting to see how Light wants to try to parry this, because every single Terran has ideas on what they want to do against this, right? By the way, I just want to throw this out there. Light did not send anything onto the map, so there's a possibility Stork goes like Zealot Nexus, which I think gas steal into a fast Nexus is the hardest thing to play against this Terran, like the strongest overall.
Yeah, it does put pressure on the Terran to either try to play the hardest game of catch-up or to try to do a cheese. We want to watch that scouting SCV that's out in the middle of the map pretty carefully. Will this make another barracks? We do have two SCVs on the gas, which for me as a Protoss, I would be curious, like, okay, how committed are you to trying to get my gas, really? We did have a game earlier where it was Bisu doing the same build, and we saw him barely survive with that. But yeah, this just seems to be a very trendy build now, especially here in the Korea scene, where you go for the quick gas steal into the quick Nexus, and because Terran has been inhibited from tacking, Zealots are basically just better at fighting on the ground against Marines unless it's an all-in with SCVs, in which case Protoss brings their workers with him too and tries to take a fight that way. Now, Light's response to this is a little bit different from what I've seen people do, but he seems to have something else very, very mapped out, which is two SCVs attack the assimilator that is used to prevent him from getting gas. Now, oh no, there's two. There's one above the assimilator too. And then he sends an SCV with 3 Marines down, because 3 Marines can take out a Zealot if there's an SCV there.
That's
and you
right.
expand. So this is a very cool response here. I mean, for those of you guys who ladder a lot, these are the kind of games you want to watch because you're seeing Light basically educate everybody on exactly how to thread this needle in what is a very difficult opening that the Protoss has started out with, that the Terran has to kind of recover from.
Yeah, and specifically, the reason that he branched like this, his SCV got down and saw that there was no gas for Protoss. So if there's no gas for Protoss, you can expand very, very quickly. And if there is gas, you must get your gas a bit more quickly, because otherwise they will get the critical mass of Dragoons at your bunker before you have siege mode. And then you might actually just die.
Yeah, I do this build, but a cheese version of it, which is the proxy gate into not expanding, because all the good players are doing this expand version, so all the people on the ladder respond with the expand version, so I find that the Dragoon Rush just wins.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would not be surprised if this goes out of style for a little bit, and then the cheeses start coming back in versus kind of macro races.
If people are doing this expand a lot, then it definitely should switch over. Like, that's just kind of the way of it. Like, you need that information and to decide, because if there's a bunch of range goons, you're going to be in so much trouble. But, you know, with the very delayed gas, Light can comfortably get his command center up. It's a little bit later than Stork's. Like, I think you look at this position and say, okay, Stork maybe has like a small lead. It's not a big deal. It's very playable. But Light here is getting the double factory. He's getting the engineering bay because he doesn't really have a lot of intel on what Stork is doing. But, of course, we can see he's going for quite a quick robo.
I know we're not there yet, but I'm just going to say it while we have a little bit of downtime. This doesn't seem to be a pretty bad map for carriers. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with carriers. Just, you know, with the bridges in the middle, with the high ground on the left or the right. It does seem like Terran could get in hot water as well versus carriers in trying to take a fourth base. Now, we might not see it at all, but I just want to put that out there, because if you've been following ASL the last few years, I feel like we have more carrier games with Stork than anybody besides maybe Mini.
Yeah, that's right. And I definitely agree with your assessment of the map. It looks like a very good carrier map. Certainly better than what we saw Best doing. Remember that, where Best is like, all right, let's shove everything over these small bridges, and it ends up working, but only because he is just crushing overall. I think that the carriers, you know, it's going to be like impossible to go over bridges, and they can retreat over some of the dead airspace or some of the hills and stuff. Anytime you see a map with a ton of terrain changes where Goliaths can't just follow, the carriers are going to be extra strong there.
Now for Light, we've got two factories here. The Armory's coming down. Armory, generally an indicator that, like, you're not going to have a lot of action right away. It's a bit more of a defensive posture. But, you know, we don't have... You know, whenever you do any of these quick Nexus builds... Oh, well, there's a Stargate. Okay, that answers that. He is going for super fast carriers. I was going to say, whenever you go for these quicker Nexus builds, the one thing that feels weird about it, if you play the more standard textbook PvT, is that your observers are later, so sometimes you have no idea what the Terran's up to until this observer gets over there.
Well, even if his observer gets over there, there's a line of turrets, so he actually can't get in. Not that there's like a lot to find. Yeah.
There's a tasteless observer right there.
When you see an observer, or rather the observer sees those turrets like that, it's like, okay, well, I mean, there could be a cheese behind here, but a lot of times when Terran expands this quickly, they just kind of have to make a blanket defense, right? Like, if a Reaver flew in and there wasn't a turret in one location, there's no way to deal with that correctly. Like, you're just going to take a ton of damage. So it's just a lot smarter to spend an extra, you know, 150, 200 minerals on turrets and just not take any damage from anything.
Now, it's 6 factory, so there's going to be a push come in here that should be... you know, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to deal with. Again, I want to point out the geography of the map because that's so important for these 2-base pushes. There are these sets of 3 bridges, and if Protoss is very preemptive about trying to delay the push, the Terran has to push over bridges twice, which is a lot. It's a big ask for the Terran.
It really is. And the fact that they could counterattack as well, Tastosis, makes it like a little bit nerve-wracking to go around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one thing about Brood War that actually it's frustrating when you play, and people will ask, when they're trying to learn, like, I don't, I can't get my units across stuff. Well, that's one of the things about the game. It's very hard to encroach on somebody's territory when it gets narrow. And so I think Light's doing a great job. I love his doubling up of the siege tanks to always get a foothold in case one gets sniped. I think weaker Terrans, they always move they kind of siege him up fragmentedly, but he's kind of doing it in these chunks so that if the Dragoons engage, he does get a siege tank shot off. He does get the punish out there. And we're going to see the leapfrogging begin. Now, if anybody can beat the build that Stork's going for, it seems like it would be Light. Like, it seems like he would have the toolkit for this,
He's really doing the perfect thing against it. Like, he doesn't have a comm set. He hasn't seen the carriers. But to go directly into an armory +1 6 factory, like, I couldn't come up with something better for him to do in this situation. But you see, this is the counterattack I was kind of talking about before. This is what gets really scary, is the Protoss player, all they have to do is buy time with carrier builds, because the more time you buy, the more carriers you get. And carriers scale better than everything. So that's what Stork is looking to do. He has his army on the left side. He has an observer kind of watching the front of the army and the back of the army. So we should see him do a counterattack as Light starts to move into the center.
Okay, so the counterattack is essential, by the way. This was, I think, is one of the big things you have to learn as Protoss. If you don't understand the fact that you can generate threats by counterattacking, you're not getting the use out of the race that you could get. Again, Vultures, they've got to set up mines. Tanks, they've got to siege. Dragoons and Zealots can just run. So you take an engage, you do your damage, you run right back out. Now, he's got to be careful because he's going to get stuck. This is a very narrow area. As you can see, Light's going to try to box him in here. But even though Protoss is getting chased away, what's important to remember is that the carriers are beginning to accumulate. And this accumulation phase of the carriers is what the Terran fears.
It is a bit scary right now. There's 2 carriers out already. +1 is done. Some Goliaths are coming down. He also has some SCVs that could help to build some turrets and whatnot. Let's see if he can push over this bridge and start to get some value. But look at this. Stork moved that group of Dragoons that was kind of chased away, and he's moving them back up for that counterattack again. He has an observer in place to remove those mines, and this could shut off reinforcements.
And sometimes that's all you need. This set of Dragoons counterattacking creates real problems here. Now, do we have anything that can hit air? We have I think, 6 Goliaths, something like that. But the Dragoons are going to be able to surround this. That being said, I do feel like this is, I think, more of a problem here for Stork. I don't know how he's going to keep this alive.
This is rough, man. Like, he's losing his natural immediately. It seems like we're going to have a big flank come down. But even if he... there's no way to actually engage that army correctly. I think Light is so far ahead right now.
A scan comes down over here. He's going to see that there's a third base. And so Protoss has surrounded this, but it seems to me like Light has this mathed out so well. Oh my god, he goes for a base trade. Oh, but Light's pretty prepared for this.
Oh.
This is so interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think this can work from Stork. Light has enough here. He has missile turrets galore, 4 tanks on high ground, a ton of Goliaths. I don't think you have any chance of breaking this, whereas Light is going to rampage through Stork's base.
I mean, this is a masterclass on how to beat what Stork's doing. But the carriers are out. If he can keep the Dragoons away, maybe he can snipe the tanks. I mean, the tanks are pretty well positioned, to be totally honest. But let's see. No more carriers being made in this game, by the way. I wish this observer would go to the top. Thank you. He does kill the command center. So, Terran is not working with a lot, but Protoss really isn't either. Can he then send the Dragoons back around? This does seem to be a situation that... Oh, no. Well, that's it.
My God.
Oh, and you just saw Stork just recoil in his chair. I was going to say, Stork's played this type of game so many times before, but you lose the carriers, you lose the game. So, all right, guys, that's it, folks.
Well,
Light moves on to the next round.
Kind of a hilarious ending there.
Yeah.
You could see that Stork did do basically the exact same thing as the previous game. And like I said, this is not unlike Stork to do something like that. And Light blindly countered it, honestly. Like, he just went 6 factory and +1. And that's, like, going to give you the strongest possible counterattack to kill carriers with that early. So, Light kind of guessed what was happening. Not that he's dead against anything with that build, but Obviously, it would be a lot weaker if he's playing against some of this other stuff, Speed Shuttle or Arbiter or something like that. But he catches Stork and advances like pretty easily, honestly. Nothing looked very hard here tonight for Light.
I would have liked to see the carrier stay alive because I think there is some play in sniping the Goliaths, keeping the Dragoons, as running keep away.
ASL 시즌 15
anyways, guys, interview time. Let's see how Light's
경기
feeling.
함께하고 계십니다. 오늘의 첫 번째 16강 진출자가 굉장히 빠르게 탄생했습니다. 이재호 선수 만나보겠습니다. 축하드립니다.
감사합니다.
와, 중계진 분들도 말씀하셨지만 경기 전 굉장히 결의에 찬 인터뷰가 인상적이었는데요. 결승전만큼 준비했다라고 하신 만큼 오늘 거의 무결점의 두 경기를 보여주고 빠르게 16강에 진출했습니다. 벌써 8시즌 연속 16강에 진출하고 있는 이재호 선수인데요. 소감을 먼저 좀 들어볼까요?
일단 오늘 좀 걱정이 많았었거든요. 조가 좀 쉽지도 않고 제가 좀 요즘에 테란 대 테란전도 좀 약점이 좀 노출이 되다 보니까 정영재 선수도 어렵고 송병구 선수도 그렇고 다 어려워 보이는 거예요. 그래서 그만큼 좀 잠을 좀 줄여가면서라도 열심히 준비를 했는데 그게 어떻게 또 하다 보니까 또 연습이 또 채워지지 않더라고요. 그래서 정말 손가락이 부러질 정도로 했었는데 오늘 그게 결과로 나온 것 같아서 참 다행입니다.
이혜훈 선수와의 경기에서는 마린을 소수 병력을 돌려가면서 멀티를 견제하면서 좋은 운영을 보여주셨고 또 송병구 선수와의 경기에서는 6팩으로 빠른 진출 타이밍을 잡고 캐리어 맞춤으로 좀 준비를 하셨던 것 같아요.
제가 사실 거의 저구전 위주로 준비를 하고 승자전은 생각을 잘 안 했었거든요.
네.
근데 앞 경기에서 그 정영재 선수랑 경기를 할 때 캐리어를 쓰는 거예요. 그래서 아 맞다, 병구 형 캐리어 많이 썼지, 그 생각을 하면서 게임을 임했는데 그래서 그게 또 좀 잘 통했던 것 같습니다.
오히려 정영재 선수와 송병구 선수의 경기를 지켜보면서 좀 아이디어를 얻으셨군요.
네네.
아, 역시 또 경험에서 우러나오는 이런 좀 본능적인 플레이가 다시 한번 이재호 선수를 16강의 자리에 올리셨습니다. 와이프분도 오셨고 오늘 치어풀이 굉장히 인상적이었습니다.
예.
승리하지 못하면 집 비밀번호를 바꾼다고.
그러니까 집에 못 들어갈 뻔했어요.
오늘 안전하게 귀가하실 수 있게 되셨는데요.
네네네.
응원해주신 분들, 가족분들께도 한 말씀 해주시죠.
오늘 그 새별이가 응원해준 덕분에 처음으로 또 2승 깔끔하게 진출한 것 같고요. 다음번에도 잘 부탁해.
자, 이제 16강에 오르셨는데 테란이 굉장히 많습니다. 이재호 선수가 계속 태태전에 대한 좀 염려를 하고 계시는데 그래도 또 해결 방안을 모색해 오시겠죠?
네, 걱정만 하고 있는 건 아니고요. 준비를 지금도 계속 하고 있기 때문에 그것도 오늘처럼 준비 잘하면 극복할 수 있을 거라 생각합니다.
시드 2명이 또 테란이에요. 유영진 선수와 또 김지성 선수가 자리하고 있는데 테란을 만난다면 또 어떤 테란을 만나는 게 조금 덜 까다로울 거라고 생각하세요?
일단 둘 다 많이 까다로워졌어요. 그 친구들도 정말 저한테 배우던 게 엊그제 같은데 어느새 성장해가지고 제가 이기기 너무 힘들더라고요.
네.
그래서 좀 많이 준비를 해야 될 것 같고요. 뭐 어느 조에 들어가던 제가 좀 배운다는 자세로 열심히 임할 겁니다.
또 우승자 테란 출신다운 모습을 16강에서 팬분들이 정말 기대를 하고 계실 것 같습니다. 끝으로 팬분들께도 한 말씀 해주시죠.
오늘 좀 경기가 저는 좀 만족스러웠거든요. 16강에서도 좀 그런 경기 보답해드리면서 꼭 상위 라운드 진출해서 우승까지 다시 한번 도전하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
네, 이재호 선수 진출 축하드립니다. 인터뷰 감사합니다.
고맙습니다.
자, 이렇게 오늘의 첫 번째 16강 진출자 이재호 선수와 함께했습니다.
I cannot wait until the day I could say I made it. All the hard nights, all the hard days I was facing. Now they see me shining like it's amazing. Now they see me shining like it's amazing. They like it's amazing. Working hard till I'm the greatest. I cannot wait until the day I could. I've been coming up hot for a minute. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. I've been coming up hot for a minute. 실성세다 제로. 그래 걱정 빼고 고민 빼고 망설임 빼고 This is zero life. 없어도 되는 건 빼고 실성사이다 제로.
상큼함 맥스, 칼로리 X, 맛있는 함 제로. 요즘 제일 탐나는 제로, 우리들의 제로 탐스 제로. 같이 떠나볼래?
Look at me, baby, I'm the queen.
Ooh, look at that title, Artosis. That's a rough one. Group F losers. I never noticed how brutal the graphic is.
Oh, man. One of these guys is really getting eliminated.
Why don't we
Their
watch
parents
these
are not
two
gonna be
losers
proud.
fight it out and see who's really the worst, Artosis?
From Group F of all groups as well.
Yeah.
Damn, the bottom of the bottom. We got JYJ going up against Sacsri. It's going to be on Nemesis, which is kind of a wild map. I feel like this could go either way, but maybe I'm feeling JYJ a little bit favored here.
Yeah, I think you could be right about that. I think Sacsri is very good. I always have a hard time personally predicting where he's going to be at because if you watch him play, he is really good. I do feel like he gets overshadowed by these other Zerg players. But this guy's got the respect of all these other pros out there. They all say he's really good. He works really hard. JYJ did look very strong here. Yeah, you know, I'm not sure who takes this. I think JYJ is supposed to take this. I think you're right. And then I think we should have our third carrier game against Terran here with Stork.
You know what? You might actually have just spoiled the rest of the group days. You might have actually ruined tonight's cast.
I think I'm right.
You're the best caster for Group F, that's for sure.
I'm always good with the losers, Artosis. All right, guys, we're going to hop into this game. Our map is going to be Nemesis, and it's going to be a TVZ for a change here. No Protoss this time around here, as both JYJ and Sacsri are coming back off of some pretty painful losses, if I'm going to be honest, in this fight for survival. Right now, 3 players left in the round of 24. 2 of them are here right now, and one of them is waiting for the winner of this to get that final spot and move on to the round of 16 here in this ASL.
All right, Nemesis should be an interesting map. We'll get into that in just a moment. Here we go into the loser match. In the bottom left, we have JYJ. And in the top right, we have Sacsri. You know, a few things about this map. Obviously, you have all those areas that you can shut off with the assimilators and eggs, so it can become somewhat islandish. Those bases have less resources than a normal base, so they will run out a little bit quicker. So, like, generally, when you have a base that's like that, that base is quite good for Zerg. Because they have Mutalisks, which can kind of control the transportation of units around the map. Like, they can prevent you from attacking them, and they can attack yours very easily. But since they run dry a bit quicker, that's problematic for Zerg in and of itself, that they just can't get quite as much gas from them. So that's kind of how the map is balanced, along with the fact that there's less bases on this map. That's something we've been talking about a lot. These 12 base maps for 4-player, as opposed to 16. So, and with the reduced resources, you certainly run out quicker.
Yeah, it's I do welcome maps like this as we continue to unpack maps more and more in StarCraft and get an idea of, you know, how the races operate on all these different, you know, very complex maps. Maps are what make RTS so great, honestly. I mean, I know League of Legends is like the biggest game in the world, but man, not a lot of maps on that, you know? I mean, I know
Not so many.
I know they changed the items. Don't come at me. I get it. But, like, there's just something nice about having totally new terrain, totally new situations that can happen based off of the geography and architecture of a map.
It really does keep it very fresh. And the different looks, the different tile sets, I think, actually add a lot, where it just, like, it's visually appealing all the time. Now, this is a 4-8 barracks from JYJ. It's not a build that's meant to kill your opponent. It is more of a pressure play. Now, see the drone sees this SCV, and then the Overlord is going to see the other SCV exiting, so he knows it's at least one proxy barracks. So Sacsri is going to be somewhat ready here. But, of course, the counter to one proxy barracks as opposed to two proxy barracks is very, very different. Like, with two proxy barracks, you want to cancel that hatchery, make a sunk right away. Against one, you just got to kind of be careful with your micro. You don't want to lose too many drones.
Yeah, it's really about just not overreacting. So we've got the drones coming out here now. And, I think this should go fine for Sacsri. I mean, cross spawns is about as good as you can ask for as a Zerg here when this rush comes at you. As long as he doesn't drop a drone. One little trick, by the way, for when you're having this fight as the Zerg is to hotkey screens. Okay, he drops 1, 2 drones.
Okay, you know what? This is good for Sacsri, I would say.
Yeah,
Generally,
I think so.
that's the line that you're looking for. As Terran to be even is to kill 2 drones, but he lost 2 Marines rather quickly, lost the SCV, had to cancel the bunker. This is not that many lings that Sacsri had to make. 6 lings is not bad. I like it slightly more for Sacsri, but not end of the world for JYJ.
So, just to go back for a second, what I was saying, you can hotkey that screen. If you don't do this already, you should Shift F2, Shift F3, Shift F4. You can bind any key, any of those keys to a location on the map, and so you can bind that over the bunker, and then bind it. Like use F2 as an example for your main hatchery. So when your weakened drone starts to take damage, you can click F2 or F3 and send the drone immediately back on the mineral patch to pull away. And one thing about for foreigners that played StarCraft, they didn't get to watch a lot of people in person play StarCraft, so they didn't pick up on a lot of the mechanical tricks.
Yeah.
But using tricks like that are actually what one of the big things that differentiate Korean pros and maybe people that just watch ASL or play from home and they're not in Korea, right?
It's a good point from the old days. I remember like every single LAN tournament I go to, I felt like my skill doubled because I got to watch other people play. Whereas, if you're only watching a VOD like this, you actually don't know what they're doing completely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think I got an advantage along with my brother because we shared a bedroom, and so we would we would just see each other play, and you notice these weird things. You could point out to the other one, you're always only clicking on that upgrade box. You never use the hotkey, and the other one would be like, really? There was all these moments where we could kind of give each other insight. And if you want to see a really extreme version of that, it was Korean pro houses.
Yeah.
Where you have 12 guys all living together, and they're all watching each other and trying to help each other make the adjustments they need to make in their own play.
Yeah, very good point there. Now, looking at this particular game, right, it looks like a 2 barracks academy rush from JYJ. Pretty standard follow-up to what he did there. Over on Sacsri's side, he has taken that second gas, hatching just a few more lings. Of course, he took his 3rd base over at 9 o'clock. And that is, it's important for JYJ to know that so he can think about maybe, okay, do I want to go, for instance, Valkyrie in a dropship or Vessel in a dropship or something like that to try to attack that base?
This is a little bit of an able play here. He's stemmed, and he's going to just bum rush right up to the sunks. The lings were actually there to buy some time. I think he just barely did it.
Yeah, it looks like the defense is just in time here. A little bit painful that he didn't make it, but yeah, that ample style, right? You just stim across the map. If it was close spawns, that might have actually worked.
Mm-hmm. I think you're probably right, actually. I mean, I think he... It's funny that this is, this feels like it should be something that's old that everybody tried to do, but instead it's 25 years later. This is the play, But, it works. I mean, so much of Zerg especially is about cutting those corners, about getting your defense as late as possible because you're sacrificing a drone every time you make the building, that sometimes these sprints that we see across the map to just run and kill the Zerg can just end the game. Was that a second starport, or is this double starport?
Yeah. That's 2 starport right now. So it's 2 barracks into 2 starport. I didn't see if he's going armory or not. This could just be a science vessel opener. You know, I feel like Science Vessel openers are coming back just a little bit because Valkyries have been so popular, so it's always good to kind of be rotating through stuff. Great scan there, shows him exact timings of the Evolution Chamber as well as the Queen's Nest, so he's going to know when to expect that Hive and everything as well. And just going to go ahead and pressure a little bit out on the map here with this Bioforce.
And, you know, Mutas and Wraiths, it's a funny thing. It's not like one beats the other. If they have to sit there and, you know, and not move and fight, then the Mutas do beat the Wraiths, because everything beats a Wraith if the Wraith has to stand and fight. But if you can get it to where you can maybe try to snipe this down, it can be pretty handy. Wait, I'm sorry, there's double, is there double add on there?
Yeah, he's going for Science Vessels here.
I'm sorry, okay, I looked at this and decided something totally different.
Oh. Yeah,
Sorry,
it's just,
never mind.
it's like it's a very quick Science Vessel, basically. I think it's good for this map in general to try to get your starports up as quickly as possible, because really starports are the only way to attack those bases. You can see that already Sacsri has taken down those two geysers, so you can't walk through from the outside. So it's like really, really hard to attack these bases, and the only way to really do that is to get some anti-air to deal with Mutas and then try dropship.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think definitely you try to get whatever you can to take on the Mutas, and the dropship play is probably a must here. Good catch. JYJ pushes in, and those Mutas bounce right off here. You know, how scared is the Terran right now, since the Zerg already has a third gas and a third base that can't really be touched?
Well, that is what we're coming to the head of, right? Like, it's okay, you can play against the 3 base, and don't forget, like I mentioned before, like, you're going to run out of gas at that base a little bit more quickly. It's not a full geyser, and it's not full mineral patches. But JYJ, like, I almost 100% guarantee it's either going to be 2 vessel or 4 vessel, and then he's going to go drop ships. Because, like, you know, it is hard for Zerg to get their ground units over that base as well, and I think you want to attack it as quickly as you possibly can, because if you can get any damage at that third, that's huge.
Yeah, it's one of the things that smart Zergs have always known how to do is try to expand to the hardest to reach locations. Like, Zerg are really, you know, you wouldn't think about it when you first look at it, but they're so good at turtling and kind of hiding and getting holed up somewhere. By the way, this push is northbound, and the Mutas are very far. So he's basically going to have to try to do a counterattack here. But, you know, there's enough Marines back here. I think that, you know, he's going to be okay. He can go back to the bunker. Sacsri can't get much done. How many lurkers are here? There's actually none yet. Does he have enough to maybe bust this? Is there a D-Matrix maybe? Something like that?
I think not quite yet for the D-Matrix, but he has so much bio that he actually runs right into these Sunkens. The Sunkens actually doing like an okay job so far, but yeah, if he had even one lurker, this would look completely different.
Yeah, it was a very fortunate moment there. He kind of got in, and then you know you realize, okay, he just barely doesn't have enough. Now Zerg does survive it, but he lost almost all the Mutas. There's 4 Mutas left here, almost 3 if that 4th one gets sniped off there. Lurkers are finishing, so Zerg should be able to find his balance here. But I gotta say, you know, a big trade-off there on both sides, and I think honestly, getting that Muta count down very low, I would almost say this is better for Terran.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Really, that was the turning point where it's like, you get rid of the Mutas, you're happy. Yeah, the Mutas are so useful even after Irradiate is out. Like, normally they just go on drop defense. And the fact that he's reduced them so significantly, they can't harass him anymore. And really the best that they can do is, like, you know, maybe go in if he's trying to build a 3rd command center because it's hard to get to. But other than that, try to clean up drops. And they're not going to be that useful now since there's very few and they've been heavily damaged.
So Zerg has a 3rd base, but getting a 4th is going to be tough. But the truth is, Terran also are very uncomfortable on this map when it comes to really getting off of 2 bases. I mean, it can be done, but this is a map that sort of, I think it's fair to say both sides have a hard time having any kind of normal growth. Like, the reason why we're seeing this command center up here at the top left, it's like, it's better to hide a base than to try to grow to a neighboring base.
Those bases are so hard to walk any units over to. It's incredibly difficult to defend those. You know, Zerg has a lot more options for mobility attacks. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I think just throwing a small group of units up there is probably the best case scenario. Here, trying to get some Irradiates off. You see that Overlord kind of sitting over the Lurkers, making it a little bit harder to pull off. And still no dropships, huh? This is a little bit surprising to me because it's like probably the best dropship map, but you can see that Sacsri knows that. If you look at the mini-map, you can see this line of Scourge trying to defend his third base location.
Yeah, he's making do with what he can with there. You know, it's not every day you see that, by the way, but that should almost signal that there's got to be something else that's about to happen here if you're irradiating just a pair of Scourge. Although I guess I don't see any dropships just yet.
Well, that is something that might signal that to you, right? Like if I irradiate Scourge, know that dropships are on the way. It's
yeah.
It makes sense. It's like you just want to clear them. In fact, you know, there's all sorts of moves. Like you could throw a vessel into them even, just to make sure you get 8 more Marines out of your dropships. But we don't see those yet. He's just pressuring heavily with Irradiate, which is an okay way to play.
Another Irradiate down here on the Defilers. And this is where we get a bit of a no man's land. Oh my god, he's going to find this. And, you know, I'll tell you what, Tastosis, it all goes back to killing those mutas earlier on. Can you imagine if he had 11 Mutalisks and found that base and Terran's forced to lift? By the way, even having this science facility out here, you know, any building that you can use to tank into Scourge is always going to be handy.
Yeah, this is actually really interesting what we're seeing, because when you see someone just forego dropships and just go pure vessel, and you can tell he's staying pure vessel, like we might eventually see some dropships, sure, but when you see that science facility float up to spot more, this is just so you hit better irradiates all the time. But Sacsri is going into Hydro Lurker Defiler, which is, for SK Terran, the hardest thing to kill. Like, you can't break them. Plagues go off nonstop, so your Marines can actually get one-shotted by the long-range Hydras. And then you've got the Lurkers to kind of back everything up and be invincible under Darkstorm. So it's a tough situation, but we did see JYJ adding additional factories, and he is starting to add siege tanks now. And once he gets up to a good critical mass of those, then he should be able to hold off the Hydro Lurker Defiler.
Now, I know a lot of times you keep the forces of infantry outside of their base and kind of do this contained play. Is there any merit in trying to push in? Do you think you can ever get the critical mass of Irradiates to snowball the Defiler count to 0 and try to break through?
Yeah, I think it is possible. He's been so consistent on the Irradiates, and again, that third base will run out a little bit earlier. Really what we're looking for is for this to stay slightly JYJ favored, like we're seeing where he's poking everywhere, for another 5 minutes. And if he does that, all the gases are going to start running out. And then Sacsri is pretty dead. So Sacsri has about 4 or 5 minutes to really get something going. And you can see he's opened up a path here. He's trying to expand towards the bottom right. And if he can do that and start hitting his plagues, then, yeah, this becomes very playable for him. See, there's that plague. There's the Darkstorm. One Firebat goes under, so he does have to back up.
Yeah, the Firebat can actually take this on under there. Other than that, the Firebat's not really a great unit.
Yeah.
So Zerg's now growing into the bottom right. We are in for an epic TVZ here, Tastosis. This is going to be, I think, a pretty long game.
I think you're right about that. Another plague went down. It hit a ton of vessels there. So annoying. The plague vessels get picked off so quickly by Hydras. It becomes very hard to actually irradiate anything other than a Hydralisk.
And, if Terran can't get into this spot now and a Nidus network gets up, it's going to be really bad news. Luckily, I think he's got enough irradiates. It should just be infantry versus Zealots and Hydras. So maybe Terran actually does come in here and break through this position.
Ooh, this is a huge moment for him, and in fact, he will be able to. The D-Matrix not even truly needed here, I think. There are stacked lurkers,
actually. On top of each other?
Yeah, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
But that did so well there as well.
Yeah, you could put as many lurkers on top of each other as you want. It's not an uncomfortable unburrow, but it's very deceptive. Even for us as casters, we can't tell how many are actually there. It looked like it was just 1 when it was actually 4.
In the middle, a push continues. Some good plagues going down. He's trying to repair some of these vessels as well. And a lurker gets out here, but oh no, I thought Sacsri would just use, a Darkstorm there and just burrow his lurkers and save that hatchery, but he might lose that now.
Oh, this is a drop, right, that I'm seeing get killed off here?
Dude, yeah, you would imagine that it is.
Yeah.
That's painful. But at the same time, all the tanks killed in the center. But Sacsri he's in tough shape. Losing this base, truly a critical mistake.
Oh my god, if he doesn't scan that, that's all going to get killed off. Zerg's supply is hurting, but don't be misled by that. I do think Zerg's probably going to lose this game, but Zerg can function off a very low supply. It's a very funny race in this matchup specifically.
Yeah, the number I always throw around is 70 supply. That's where with Nidus's Defilers and Lurkers, you can kind of just stay alive. But the second you drop below that, Terran kind of breaks in everywhere at once. So we'll see if that stays true in this game here. Sacsri's still kind of pushing out the map. You can see he's like farming with Plague, basically. Just Plague after Plague after Plague.
It seems like JYJ basically has Zerg where he wants him. This third base that he's had here, it's given him a pretty fruitful game, but it's going to dry up. And without a fourth base, and there is one being taken at the bottom right, but I have to imagine, we just saw a scan there in bottom center. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a scan in the bottom right to just check that, because Terran pretty much has map control right now.
Yeah, all he has to do is deny the base for another couple minutes and the game is his. It already looks like it's his. He's up like 100 supply. It's hard to imagine ever there being a comeback. But Sacsri, he's trying, man. Miracles can happen with Defilers sometimes.
These Marines are going to be able to shut down these Overlords coming through here. Again, we don't know which Overlord holds what, but, the one with the Defiler dies and you're probably not going to succeed with the drop.
Well, he's going to lose a bunch of Overlords here once again. Oh, the Defiler made it out, Tastosis, but he's still
Or if it's only the Defiler, that also doesn't work.
No, it doesn't do too much then. GG is called, and yeah, Sacsri unable to really get anything going. Really some mastery there from JYJ. Like, in theory, that's the most stable way to play Terran vs. Zerg, is to just irradiate after irradiate after irradiate, rallying your units forward, keeping the pressure on Zerg, making them do that defense. Really well done from JYJ, and he's shown that in the past in ASL as well. I think the cleanest played TVZ I've ever seen was from him a few seasons ago, and he does it here again. A very beautiful game from JYJ.
Yeah, excellently done by JYJ. He's going to be exhausted going into this next match, because we've got our final two players left here in our group, and they're going to have to now go on and face off against each other once more. Remember, Stork did defeat JYJ before. Stork addicted to carriers. Is he going to have a game without carriers? I don't think so. But what can JYJ bring differently against that style of play? We're going to have to find out, because only one of these two guys is going to move on.
상큼함 맥스, 칼로리 X, 맛있는 탐스 제로. 요즘 제일 탐나는 제로, 탐스 제로. 같이 떠나볼래?
솔직히 인간적으로 두 개 다 가졌어요 baby 칼로리 제로 맛은 제대로 그래 걱정 빼고 고민 빼고 맘소리 빼고 This is zero life This is zero life 뺄 건 뺐어 질성 제일 제대로 맛있어 제대로 없어도 되는 건 빼고 살살 제로 칠성 사이다 제로.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the last match of the round of 24, and it's going to close out with a rematch here, JYJ versus Stork.
All right. The big question here is, does Stork once again go for one of these very fast 2-base carrier builds. And what is JYJ going to change to try to play against that better?
Yeah, you know, it didn't seem like there was any one thing that JYJ did wrong, and if anything, it was just a smart tactical play from Stork. He basically took a fight on the high ground. Even when I was play-by-playing it, I was saying, oh, well, you shouldn't attack here, right? Like, you always want to run away, and then I was dead wrong. You know, with the high ground advantage, the Dragoons won enough of the fights against the Goliaths and the tanks. It kind of put Stork in the position he was looking for. Light never gave him that chance. So I think if this is going to be a 2-base Terran versus a 2-base carrier into late third base, it's going to really come down to that engagement with the first push.
All right, well, let's see. We are getting into it. The final match in the round of 24. One of these players will advance. Let's see who it's going to be.
Guys, before we go into our final match, one more shout out to the Patreon. We love you guys. We appreciate you. If you can sign up for a year, we really appreciate it. Patreon.com/ASL English. Your support is appreciated. And without you guys, it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And I tell you, this round of 24 has been fantastic. I mean, I love JYJ as a player, but I personally am rooting for Stork to pull this one out. I think he'd be really fun to have in that next round. And, of course, having a fourth Protoss, I think, just makes the round better in every way. So,
yeah, you know, it's a funny thing you brought up, Artosis, because I think the first 2 or 3 days, it's always you and me rooting for our favorites, or maybe like the guys that teach us how to play the race we play, right? Like I was pretty bent out of shape that Mini lost, but you know, as you get later on in the like round of 24 or round of 16, then you're looking at like, okay, is this actually going to be good for the show? Like, I want a certain amount of each of the races here as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I would like to see Stork go on here. It's kind of fun to see what he's going to try to do. Like you were saying, he's not in like super try-hard training mode, you know. So, you know, it's for a guy who's been at times the best player in the world, like to see what kind of strategies he comes out with in an era where he doesn't have a lot of time to practice. That's really fun.
It's very true. Like it's always fun just to see what he's chosen to do anyways, but I really wouldn't be surprised if it's fast carrier again. The one problem with that, I think Sylphid out of all the maps he's played is way worse for carriers than some of these other maps.
He went Pylon, Gate, Pylon.
Yeah, this should be a 2 Zealot opener, I would say. 2 Zealot into Goon, probably.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, this really is a crazy trendy build then. Yeah, this is one where you basically get a lot of pressure built up on the ground here, and then you kind of tack into it later on. Is he going to get the SCV?
Ooh, just barely not, it looks like. Oh, you got to be careful here.
He could.
Yeah, that was very good micro there from Stork. Like, the way that he slid the probe away, he was trying to get the SCV to slide after him and lose the repair, and then utilize the probe range. But it looks like JYJ micros well enough. A Marine is out, so not going to end up getting it. A good try there from Stork.
And the Zealot will now come out. That pressure is going to begin. It seems like, you know, with a build like this, a lot of this is to make it as difficult as possible for Terran to ever comfortably take another base. You've got to keep them back, keep them oppressed.
Yeah. And in fact, I think it's even a 3 Zealot build, but basically against this, and as soon as you see a second Zealot, you should always be starting your 3rd depot. Like, you can't really play against this with a 2 depot opener. It doesn't make sense. So you're probably going to end up making 4 to 5 Marines, get that Vulture out, get a bunker up, and then go for the command center. So, you know, the Terran expansion will be slowed, but Protoss is slowing their own expansion with a build like this as well.
Yeah, it keeps the game a lot more kind of how do I say it? Just it's not a growth game yet, right? It's a lot more pressure on both sides. It's a lot more respect on both sides, and then eventually you're going to get to a moment where, you know, both sides can actually kind of reach out on the map. But if either side plays recklessly here, you can be punished horribly.
Yeah,
like, you know, a lot of you guys might not have seen, you know, Protoss open like this, and you know, if you do this to somebody on lower level on the ladder, they just might not get enough Marines. You know, they just might get overwhelmed by your Zealots.
Yeah, you know, it used to feel bad to make extra Marines, but very smart in this case. One thing to mention is when you're putting up heavier pressure in the early game, the percent chance that Terran is going to go Engineering Bay as opposed to Academy goes up, which will make it harder for Terran to kind of figure out what you're doing. So this could be a reasonable way to try to force JYJ into going like a turret opener that wouldn't be able to scout something like his fast carriers.
It's a really smart point. It seems like everything that Stork does set up to create ambiguity about what he's going to do. The only funny part about it is that he is going for carriers every time, right? So it's, you know, as a one-off, like, you know, if you were both two barcodes on a ladder duking it out, this would probably be a pretty brainy play, right? But I just wonder if, you know, JYJ kind of already anticipates the weird carrier tech. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does go for an armored tech or plays a different game. That would be cool to see, too.
Sure, there's a lot of different ways that Stork could go about doing this. In fact, it might be way smarter to make it look one way and then go the other way. He is adding that second gateway. He's adding his robotics as well. He does have the double Zealot if he wants to go Reaver. Like, he's already got that kind of prepped for the shuttle. I don't think he's going to go Reaver. Like, people have gotten so good with Reaver, and Terrans have gotten so used to playing against Reaver. I think that's maybe not Stork's strongest suit.
I think you're probably right about that, Tastosis. You know, this is starting to look more and more like the carrier setup. Can I just say why? Because it probably sounds weird that I would say that. The pylon out there like that. When I watched him do the weird two-base carrier play before on Sylphid, this was like years ago we casted this game. He basically used all of his extra pylons as spotters so that he could run around the tanks and basically do a counterattack. It was a very weird thing to watch, but I thought it was so smart when I saw it. Because his whole goal is just to outmaneuver you.
Sure, yeah. By the way, JYJ's build, I think, is quite smart. Stork has put a lot of money into units in this early game, and JYJ is kind of doing the same. Like, he made a lot of Marines. He's added a second factory. And I think he'll probably rally Vultures with this and try to do a little bit of a push. So this should, at minimum, give him a feel for where Stork is at right now. But Stork's build, if he micros this well, I think he'll be all right. Right? Like, he's got 2-gate goon going. He's got observers going. He did just lay down his third Nexus, though, which makes it a little bit harder.
Also, you know, the Zealots, they make the micro a lot more complicated for the Terran. Suddenly, the Zealots can be dragged into mines, and those mines can be pulled into the armies and stuff like that. And also, the third base, this is a little bit of a different build. Not our 2-base carrier.
Yeah. Yeah, he is switching it up now. The Vultures will find out that there is, in fact, a third Nexus going up. This does open up aggressive opportunities for JYJ. Like, Stork's units are kind of split. He could bring all of his units and try to shove the natural, or he could, like, draw the goons around, maybe run Vultures by, maybe run Marines up the ramp to hit that Nexus up there. Like, there's a lot of different small options here for JYJ to try to generate some damage.
Dragoons are going to back up now. You know, the pylon, it does slow down progress. It's hard with these units that have low range, like the Marines, to be utilized effectively when the Dragoons are there. And again, with no siege mode here, you got to be careful as well, because these Dragoons could just hunt this down. A lot of times, a Terran on the run, I mean, they can really get beaten up by those Dragoons. And Dragoons are a little bit faster than Marines. They're a little bit faster than tanks. And so they're able to play catch-up here.
He's got to get back to that bunker. Now, he ran by with 2 Vultures, but he actually didn't micro them. So that was a big lost opportunity. He could have gotten a lot. Siege mode not done, but he has the bunker, so he's not going to die here. Like, in fact, that's a good move from Stork to just step back. He stopped the Vulture run by, which was, you know, I was talking about, like, there's a lot of ways he can do this. And one of the best ways is to get the main army to come after you and try to run Vultures by. And unfortunately, he just didn't get the damage of that. We'll see if this second Vulture run out can catch anything, but I think Stork has just thread the needle correctly. Look at that, a nice line of goons there. The other one's coming up for a flank. The transfer is already done, and Stork is going to be on a very solid 3-base economy.
Yeah, you know, when you see a Terran move out like that, First of all, a lesser Terran player just gets murdered right there, right? I mean, I'm sure anybody who's played Terran has had that experience of just being out on the map and you think you've got an okay push and you just get shut down. But even being chased back home is pretty bad. You're really in a very difficult position now as JYJ. You don't have a third base yet, but all of your so many of your vultures were killed. You lost plenty of spare units here or there. The Protoss pretty much didn't lose anything, maybe a Zealot here or there, but overall they're not really having to suffer any losses, and therefore they're going to feel a lot more confident when the next Terran push comes out.
Really, if you do a build like that as Terran and you're not getting any damage, it's like, okay, you sacrificed armory speed, you've lost a few vultures, you haven't really gotten any probes. It's a little bit rough. But here we see Stork is going into now a 3-base carrier, so he's really mixing it up here, Tastosis. He's really going out on a limb.
Yeah, he's a pretty mad lad. No, you know, it's by the way, it gets spotted immediately here. This is I think pretty good for him. You know, it is an older style, by the way. You know, we don't have Reavers being used here. It's just your classic mass Dragoon, mass Observer kind of control play. Not even a shuttle, by the way. And I think that's something we want to remember for later on. Like, that's how unpressured Protoss feels right now from the Terran. Although he's got to be careful. He's dropping a lot of Dragoons to mines. But, you know, if you get 3 carriers out, and then once you get the 6 out, Terran is in big trouble, man. It's a very difficult game to play from. We see only 2 making. I'm sure a third is going to make soon here now. I don't believe with tech, I don't think you can get... Oh, and there is this shuttle out here. Excuse me, he gets that a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, Stork is getting to where he needs to be here.
He's doing quite a good job. JYJ is trying to set up for a push. He's going up into like 7 factory here, it looks like. He does have that +1, and he actually has 2-1 on the way. So it's a very different game than what we saw with Light against Stork. But JYJ, he might have enough units to do this, right? The Goons are like pretty damaged. We don't have a Citadel, so all the Zealots are slow. And the first carriers are not out yet. So this is really the moment where JYJ has to make some very smart moves and could end up winning the game because of them.
Drop ship out, 4th base inbound. That Citadel of Adun. That's actually the correct timing for this, by the way. You really pump the brakes on Zealot speed. The price of the Citadel and the Zealot legs would interfere with the 3rd carrier, so you want to hold out on that if you can. And JYJ, he's looking really to try to actually start to create a game that he can win. He's not trying to drag this out. He's not trying to bide his time. Whenever you watch Stork play, the longer there is a game where carriers are making, the more of a crisis it is for the Terran. But Stork has done such a good job at dancing back and forth, moving in and moving back out. You know, Terran hasn't made that much progress on the map. I mean, you can see how fluid the whole Protoss's army is right now. And, you know, it's one of the things that makes this build and this map so good. This map is a very open map in the center. It's a lot of work for the Terran to cut off circulation here.
And that's what Stork is making him do, like just the constant army movement. He's trying to just slow this down and buy that time once again. Really a master in that regard, but JYJ is pulling the trigger. He's moving forward now, and it's the right time. Like, he's got to get something done. It is just slightly scary because Stork is maxed out now, but a lot of that supplies and carriers not fighting, and the Zealots don't have legs. So really, this is the perfect time for JYJ.
Now, this could be an overextension. This may be unwise by Stork. It would seem like this would be the moment you would not want to attack in. You would not want to come in. Your carriers do not... Oh, no! They're going to be picked off!
You're certainly right about that, Tastosis. He just lost, like, everything in the whole world and killed almost nothing. I'm surprised he did that. Like, the carriers don't really have interceptors. I know pulling back is scary, but honestly, it's better to lose a base than to lose that much of your army.
Yeah, every time. Every time. That was hard to watch. Because you know the whole idea is that you just barely, every time I've ever played a game of carriers that I feel like I played right against a good player, it was so scary. Because it felt like I was about to lose, and then I just barely had enough. And then my carriers were able to create opportunities for me. And I think with that last attack there, I think you don't ever want to do that, especially moving the shuttle in and dropping. It was just a huge mistake. Now Terran can fracture off different set of tanks like we see the two over here. They can blow up the Nexus. They can go to the next location. And it's going to be chaos. And right now, frankly, Protoss doesn't have the muscle to take on a lot of fights. Now, notice the DTs there. We had several of those. The DTs can really be tough to deal with. It's kind of like a mini Arbiter where you bait out a scan. When they scan, after it diminishes, you send the next one in.
Now Zealot legs finishing up. It looks like JYJ going to get another kill here. The probe's going to get a citizen's arrest on that siege tank. And we'll see what the DTs can do. Like, he's going to drag some mines in. Not a bad idea. This is a lot of speed Zealots. But yeah, let's see. Maybe he can actually break through here and save this Nexus.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he does it. Is there another scan here? The DT can get right on these tanks or Goliaths, whichever one Stork thinks is better. And, you know, this is kind of the funny thing with these carrier rush builds is that it seems like all hope is lost. Well, gosh, if he loses that Nexus down there, too. I just saw that. Okay, so, I mean, this is a real teachable moment. I know it's a corny statement, but it's true for this game is, you know, the decision to attack into the Terran army, it negated the whole strategy that was being built up in this game, and it's kind of crazy to see, of all players in the world, Stork make a move like this.
Yeah, it's a bit painful, man. You know, I think that actually if he had pulled back, given up a base, even 2 bases, and then has, like, you know, speed, and he has his interceptors done and everything, the engagements look so different at that point. But never really able to recover his supply. His carrier count's getting pretty high, but his economy has been absolutely slaughtered.
Yeah, I really do think there's a world where you can give up 1 to 2 bases and keep at least, I don't know, 10 Dragoons alive. And you know, by then you've got 6 carriers, like he has now. Now, notice how much of a threat 6 is. Now 5, but you're just able to do more. You can snipe tanks at the snap of a finger. You can retreat and pull away and hit another location. And all you have to do from the Protoss' perspective, if the strategy is executed correctly, is you do some kind of a counterattack and you stop Terran's one other base, because their natural is going to mine out very quickly. But you can see these carriers, without the presence of Dragoons, suddenly the Goliaths just roll over them.
Yeah, definitely some mistakes there from Stork. I think his opener was actually very strong. It looked like he got himself into a pretty good position, but that one really bad engagement, this is actually the opposite of the last game that we saw between these two. That first engagement against the carrier player, you must win that as Terran. And here JYJ won it and was able to take the game.
Yeah, great game by JYJ, and the Terran dominance for the season is going to continue on. I don't know how many Terrans we're going to have in the round of 8, but we're definitely going to be casting some TBTs, Tastosis, in the round of 16.
Oh, I can't wait, Tasteless. Hopefully the round of 8 as well. Hopefully the top 4 is all Terrans. This is the story I want. The opposite of that KSL that you got.
That's right.
The tasteless KSL with all the Protoss players at the end.
I mean, we could definitely have some Terrans moving on here in the round of 8. We got a very Terran-heavy round of 16. What is it, 3 Protosses in the round of 16 right now?
Yes, that's right. Only
crazy.
3.
We're going to go to
ASL
interview, guys.
시즌 15 24강 F조 경기 모두 함께 하셨습니다. 이번 시즌의 16강 진출 선수들이 모두 결정됐습니다. 마지막 16강 진출자 정영재 선수 만나보겠습니다. 축하드립니다.
감사합니다.
최종전 끝에 2시즌 만에 16강에 다시 한번 올라온 정영재 선수입니다. 2번은 지지 않겠다라고 송병구 선수에게 복수에 성공하면서 16강에 오르셨는데요. 소감이 어떠신가요?
아직도 얼떨떨하네요. 너무 긴장해가지고 아직도 안 믿깁니다.
경기 전에 이번 F조가 정영재 본인에게는 너무나 최악의 조다, 너무나 힘든 조다라고 말씀하시면서 좀 걱정을 하셨잖아요. 연습 과정에서는 또 얼마나 어떤 우여곡절이 있었을지도 좀 들어보고 싶어요.
일단 첫날에 연습을 하는데 막 홍덕이랑 윤수철 같은 애들한테도 못 이기더라고요. 그래서 첫 경기를 포기해야 되나 했는데 포기하는 게 나았겠네요.
송병구 선수의 캐리어에 첫 경기는 일격을 당했습니다. 이후에 최종전에서 다시 한번 송병구 선수를 만났을 때는 좀 경기 전 어떤 생각을 하셨나요?
그냥 머리에 캐리어밖에 없어서
아.
그냥 스캔도 안 달고 그냥 완전 맞춤을 해버린 것 같아요. 머리에 그거밖에 없었습니다.
송병구 선수가 근데 이번에는 캐리어 가는 타이밍이 살짝은 달랐어요. 첫 번째 경기와 트리플 이후에 캐리어를 갔는데 결국에 예상하고 있었다는 듯이 팩토리를 늘리고 한 타이밍을 보시더라고요. 계속해서 염두에 두셨군요.
처음 첫 판은 벌처 시작해서 병구 형이 자원 그러니까 탱크 압박이 없으니까 아마도 앞마당 캐리어를 한 것 같은데 그러니까 마지막 경기는 일부러 탱크를 보여주는 식으로 그래서 캐리어를 좀 늦게 갔던 것 같아요.
토스전에 대한 우려를 계속해서 하셨는데 그래도 이번 24강의 정영재 선수에게는 오히려 좀 좋은 약이 되지 않았나 싶습니다. 16강에서 물론 프로토스 선수들이 이번 시즌 많지는 않지만요. 또 한 번 프로토스를 만난다면 그래도 좀 24강과는 다른 더 좋은 모습을 보여줄 수 있겠다 하는 자신감 생기셨을까요?
아니요. 저는 개인적으로 16강에서 만나는 토스들은 굉장히 거칠 것 같기 때문에 저그나 테란을 만나는 게 좋을 것 같아요.
저그나 테란 두 종족 중 한 종족을 만나야 된다면 어떤 종족이 정영재 선수에게 조금은 더 수월할까요? 거칠지 않을까요?
저그가 그나마 좀 좋은 것 같아요.
오늘 뭐 이혜훈 선수와의 패자전에서도 거의 저그를 밀봉시키다시피 나오지 못하게 하는 정영재 선수의 경기력이 굉장히 인상 깊었는데 16강에서 저그를 만날 수 있을지도 좀 기대가 됩니다. 한 시즌 쉬고 돌아온 조지명식 좀 어떨 것 같으신가요?
언제 했는지 기억이 안 날 정도로 오래돼 보이는데 그래도 이번 시즌은 열심히 하고 있거든요, 나름. 그래서 좋은 결과 있기를 기도해 보겠습니다.
오늘도 열심히 취업프를 들고 응원해주신 분들도 정말 많습니다. 경기하면서 많이 힘을 얻으셨을 것 같은데 어떠신가요?
못 봤어요. 이따가 보도록 하겠습니다.
네, 알겠습니다. 현장의 많은 팬분들께도 또 감사의 인사 전해주실까요?
사실 걱정 저도 많이 했고 팬분들도 약간 반 포기하고 있더라고요. 너무 조가 힘들었다고 생각해서 그래도 끝까지 응원해주시고 찾아와 주신 분들 진짜 너무 감사드리고 앞으로도 열심히 하도록 하겠습니다.
네, 끝으로 하고 싶은 말씀 있으신가요?
일단 연습 도와준 사람이 굉장히 많은데 현재, 재욱이 형, 태경이 형, 수철이, 뽕덕, 용태형, 재혁이 형, 지성이 이게 끝인 것 같네요. 다들 너무 감사하고 저도 도와드리도록 하겠습니다.
네, 다시 16강에 돌아온 정영재 선수 앞으로의 경기도 지켜보도록 하겠습니다. 진출 축하드립니다.
감사합니다.
자, 이렇게 해서 이번 ASL 시즌 15의 마지막 16강 진출자 테란 정영재 선수와 함께했습니다.
Well, there you have it, guys. The round of 24 is done. And, I mean, I gotta say, this was a fun day. It's always kind of weird when we have like a super thematic day, like Stork going carriers every time.
Yes.
And, you know, we already had days of ASL like this before, but, you know, I can see why he's doing it. It's too bad he attacked in like that at the very end, where I think what he needed to do was figure out any other way to buy more time.
That's right. Just pulled the trigger a bit too quickly. Maybe he thought the engagement would go better, but it absolutely did not. JYJ going to go ahead and advance. It's sad to not see Stork go forward, but, I mean, when you make a mistake like that, maybe you shouldn't be in the round of 16 this time.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we have a tournament to sort the players, right? I mean, that is not a round of 16 play. Stork will be back. He's not going away. And as you can see, here is our round of 16 player lineup. And I got to say, these are dark times for the Protoss race. Bisu, Snow, and Best. Now, here's something I do want to predict out here.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have at least 2 Protoss players in the round of 8 still.
Yeah,
I
think you're
Bisu, Best,
right.
Snow are the best shots Protoss have.
They truly are. Like, other than Mini, who's like very erratic, like these are the 3 best in the world. And then you look at the Zerg lineup as well, Tastosis, I got to say, you can't really get a stronger Zerg lineup other than getting Soma in there. Soma was a big upset already in the tournament, but that Zerg lineup is absolute insanity. You know, we'll see how it ends up going, but I think that I don't know. Looking at these lineups overall, I still think it's like the same group of people that can kind of win this tournament, like Light and Sulky and Hero and Snow. You know, those are kind of the guys that I'm looking at right now. So as long as they get through, the round of 8 is going to be insane.
And I do think we're going to be shedding a lot of Terran players in the round of 16 as well. These guys are good, but, you know, you look at Barracks, you look at Sock, even JYJ, I mean, you know, very good. And we'll see what Mind is able to pull off. But I do think that they're going to be very tested against these other Zergs and these few Protosses that we have here.
Definitely do agree with that. It's, you know, some of them certainly like a little bit weaker, whereas a lot of these guys are like, honestly, I look at the Protoss and Zerg lineups, and if you told me any of those guys are in the round of 8, I'm not surprised. Maybe I'm surprised about Jaedong because he hasn't done well for a while, but even he looked fantastic in the round of 24.
Yeah, in some ways, he looked like one of the best players in the whole tournament. I mean, that's maybe the most exciting takeaway is not just that he won, but how he won.
Well, if he can keep up that level of play, the tournament is going to be amazing going forward. One thing to note, guys, the group nomination is coming. It takes us a little bit to get that out. It's not going to be out right away just because the translation amount of time is huge.
Yes.
But then, like, it's basically we have time off until that, and then after that, the next match is like almost a week later. So there is going to be this little bit of downtime as far as ASL release goes from our end.
Yeah.
But that's just because it's not going on. So no worries there. It will be back as soon as we have those episodes to do.
So if you hear people asking, where's ASL? Don't worry. We're going to do it the moment that the games are done, but obviously we can't do it until the games actually happen. So, yeah, a little bit of downtime here, but be ready because once those games happen, we're going to have them out right away. Again, guys, thank you for the love on Patreon, patreon.com/ASL English. We love you, and we will see you in the round of 16. Bye-bye.